They say rejected mates don't survive. The pain of a severed bond, the agony of being unwanted by the one person fate chose for you, it breaks something fundamental in a wolf's soul. When Kira collapsed in the snow, bleeding and broken after her mate's rejection, she welcomed death. She had nothing left to live for. But then a massive black wolf emerged from the darkness, a rogue with golden eyes and a gentleness that defied everything she'd been taught about his kind. He curled his body around hers, sharing his warmth, refusing to let her surrender. And Kira would learn that sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one destiny chose, but the one who chooses you back. Chapter 1. The night everything shattered. The rejection happened on the night of the frost moon, when the pack gathered in the clearing and the air smelled of pine and anticipation. Kira had felt it for weeks, that inexplicable pull toward the northern border, the restlessness that kept her wolf pacing beneath her skin, the strange ache in her chest that grew stronger every day. Her mother had smiled knowingly, touched her cheek with weathered fingers, and said, "Your mate is close, little one. The bond is awakening." She should have known better than to hope. The Silverpaw pack had never been kind to Kira. Born small and plain, with dull brown fur and unremarkable features in both forms, she'd spent 22 years as the pack's afterthought. While other she-wolves bloomed into beauty, caught the eyes of strong males, and secured their places in the hierarchy, Kira remained invisible, the healer's daughter who was useful for treating wounds and mixing herbs, but never quite worthy of notice. "Stand straight," her mother, Elena, had whispered that evening as they walked toward the gathering. "When your mate sees you, nothing else will matter. The bond transcends everything: beauty, status, strength. It sees the soul." Kira had believed her. She'd worn her best dress, simple, cream-colored, nothing like the elegant gowns of the Alpha's daughters, and braided wildflowers into her dark hair. Her wolf had been singing inside her, practically vibrating with certainty. Tonight we meet him. The clearing was already full when they arrived. Silverpaw was hosting 3 visiting packs for the seasonal alliance gathering, and the air crackled with the energy of nearly 200 wolves in close proximity. Bonfires blazed against the November cold. The scent of roasting meat made Kira's stomach growl, but she barely noticed, because he was there. She'd spotted him immediately, a tall, broad-shouldered male, standing with the Iron Ridge delegation, his presence commanding even in stillness. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that caught the firelight and gleamed amber. When he turned his head, scanning the crowd, Kira's breath had caught. Their eyes met. The bond snapped into place like a physical thing, a golden thread pulling taut between them, humming with recognition and need and certainty. Kira gasped, her hand flying to her chest where warmth bloomed and spread. Her wolf howled in triumph. "Mate. Ours." Finally, for one perfect, infinite moment, she'd felt complete. Then she watched his expression change. The initial shock of recognition, she'd seen it, that flash of awareness faded into something else. His eyes traveled over her, from her plain face, to her modest dress, to her unremarkable frame. And his jaw tightened. The warmth in his gaze died like a doused flame. He looked away. "No," Kira breathed, but her mother's hand closed around her arm. "Give him time," Elena whispered urgently. The shock of the bond, sometimes it takes males a moment to. But Kira was already moving, drawn by the thread that connected them, unable to stop herself even as dread pooled in her stomach. She wove through the crowd, her heart hammering, her wolf whining in confusion and hurt. He was talking to Alpha Thorn when she approached Thorn, the leader of Silverpaw, whose cold gray eyes had never held anything but dismissal for Kira. Both males turned as she drew near, and she saw it again, that flicker of recognition in her mate's face, followed immediately by something that looked horribly like disappointment. "Excuse me," Kira managed, her voice barely steady. I need to speak with you. Please." Her mate's jaw worked. Up close, he was even more imposing, easily 6'3", built like a warrior, radiating the kind of strength and dominance that made weaker wolves instinctively lower their eyes. Everything about him screamed Alpha bloodline, power, authority. Everything about him was so far above her it hurt to look at. "I'm in the middle of a conversation," he said, his tone flat. Not cruel, but worse, utterly indifferent, as though she were a stranger interrupting, not his fated mate. "I know," but Kira swallowed hard, very aware of Alpha Thorn watching this interaction with obvious interest. Can we talk, privately? Just for a moment? Something flickered behind his eyes, guilt, maybe, or shame, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He glanced at Thorn, who was now smirking openly, clearly enjoying this spectacle. The healer's daughter, Thorn said, not bothering to hide his amusement. How unexpected. The moon goddess does work in mysterious ways. The words were polite, but the mockery underneath was sharp enough to draw blood. Kira felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her eyes on her mate, silently begging him to say something, to acknowledge the bond, to not let this powerful alpha humiliate her. He said nothing. Please, Kira whispered. Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask. For a long, terrible moment, he simply stared at her. Then he exhaled sharply through his nose, a sound of resignation, or maybe irritation, and jerked his head toward the tree line. 5 minutes. They walked in silence until the sounds of the gathering faded behind them, until they were alone among the dark trees with only the distant moon watching. Kira's whole body trembled from cold, from anticipation, from the bond that was now screaming at her to touch him, to close the distance, to complete what fate had started. What's your name? She asked softly. Damien. He didn't ask for hers. Damien Blackwood, second son of the Iron Ridge Alpha. Second son. Not heir to leadership, but still infinitely above her station. Still so far out of her reach it was laughable. I'm Kira Ashford. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to control her shaking. You feel it too, don't you? The bond? His silence was answer enough. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why did you look at me like that? Like I was disappointing? Because you are. The words were delivered without inflection, without cruelty, which somehow made them worse. Simple statement of fact, as though he were commenting on the weather. Kira felt something break inside her chest. Don't pout. Kira, Damien continued, his voice taking on an edge of impatience. I'm being honest, which is more courtesy than most would give you. The moon goddess made a mistake. It happens rarely, but it happens. I'm destined to be Iron Ridge's beta when my brother becomes alpha. I need a mate who can stand beside me in that role, who can command respect, who can... He gestured vaguely at her, his meaning clear. You can't be that. You don't know me, Kira managed through numb lips. You don't know what I know enough. He cut her off, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. You're a healer's daughter from a mid-tier pack. You have no rank, no influence, no remarkable strength or beauty or skill that would elevate my position. In our world, mates are meant to make each other stronger. You would only make me weaker. Each word landed like a physical blow. Kira's wolf was howling now, keening in anguish at this rejection, at hearing their fated mate dismiss them as worthless. The bond between them pulled taut, straining, as though trying to force them together against Damien's will. The bond, she whispered desperately. Damien, you can't just ignore it. It'll hurt you too. Fighting a mate bond, it's bearable. He said it with such certainty, such cold calculation, that Kira realized this wasn't an impulsive decision. He'd already weighed the options, the pain of resisting the bond versus the social cost of accepting her, and decided she wasn't worth it. I've heard the stories. Yes, it'll be uncomfortable, but I'm strong enough to endure it, and eventually, the bond will fade. We'll both move on. Move on? Kira's laugh came out broken, edged with hysteria. You think we can just... That's not how it works. You're my mate, the only one I'll ever have. The moon goddess herself chose you for me, then the moon goddess was wrong. Damien's eyes, those beautiful amber eyes she'd dreamed of for weeks without knowing they existed, were completely cold now. I'm sorry, Kira. I truly am. But I can't accept this bond. I won't. So what? The anger came then, sudden and hot, burning through her shock. You'll just... What? Pretend you never met me? Find some appropriate she-wolf and force yourself to... Yes, simple, direct, devastating. That's exactly what I'll do, and I suggest you do the same. Find some male from your pack, settle down, have pups, live your life, forget about me. Forget about you? Kira's voice rose. You're my mate. You can't just... You don't have the right to. I have every right. His voice hardened, taking on the commanding tone of someone used to being obeyed. I'm higher ranked, Kira. In our world, that means something. I'm giving you the kindest rejection I can clean, honest, with enough explanation that you understand it's not personal. Some males would simply disappear, leave you wondering. I'm at least doing you the courtesy of clarity. Courtesy. He thought this was courtesy. Please. The word came out as a sob. Kira hated herself for begging, but she couldn't stop. The bond was tearing at her, the rejection like acid in her veins. Please don't do this. Just give me a chance. Get to know me. Maybe I'm not what you imagined, but I'm loyal, and I'm smart, and I can learn. No. One word. Final as a door slamming shut. Damien took a step back, putting distance between them, and Kira felt it like a physical wound. The bond stretched, protested, sent sharp pain radiating through her chest. I'll be leaving with my pack at dawn, he said, and now his voice was almost gentle, the terrible gentleness of someone delivering a mercy blow. I'd appreciate it if you didn't approach me again. If you tell anyone about the bond, I'll deny it. You have no proof, and no one would believe you over me anyway. It's better for both of us if we pretend this never happened. Better for you, Kira whispered. Yes, he agreed without shame. Better for me. I won't apologize for choosing my future over a mistake of fate. You shouldn't want someone who doesn't want you, Kira. You deserve better than that. The hypocrisy of it rejecting her while claiming she deserved better might have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. Damien turned to walk away, then paused, glancing back one last time. In the moonlight, his face was all hard angles and shadows, beautiful and cruel and utterly unreachable. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I hope you find happiness. Truly. Just. Not with me. Then he was gone, walking back toward the gathering, toward his pack, toward the life he'd chosen, the one that didn't include her. Kira stood alone among the trees, her arms wrapped tight around herself, trying to hold together a heart that was literally breaking. The bond thrashed inside her like a living thing in agony, screaming at her to follow him, to not let him leave, to fight for what was hers. But he'd made his choice, and she had to live with it. Chapter 2. When hope dies in the snow. Kira didn't return to the gathering. She couldn't bear the thought of walking back into that firelit clearing, of facing the curious stares and whispered questions, of watching Damien laugh and talk, and exist as though nothing had happened, as though he hadn't just destroyed her entire world with a handful of cold, clinical words. Instead, she ran. Her wolf surged forward, demanding release, and Kira didn't fight it. She stripped quickly, her human hands clumsy with grief and shock, and let the shift take her. Bones cracked and reformed, fur rippled across skin, and then she was on 4 legs, smaller and plainer than most wolves, but faster than anyone gave her credit for. She ran through the forest, her paws barely touching the frozen ground, her breath coming in white clouds. The bond pulled at her with every stride, wrong direction. Go back, mate. But she ignored it, pushed harder, ran faster, as though she could somehow outrun the pain. It didn't work. By the time she reached the small cabin she shared with her mother on the eastern edge of pack territory, Kira was sobbing great, heaving gasps that shook her entire frame. She shifted back, stumbled to the door, and collapsed inside. Elena found her an hour later, curled on the floor in front of the dying fire, still naked, still crying. Oh, little one. Her mother's voice broke. Oh, my baby girl. Kira couldn't speak, couldn't explain. The bond was a living wound inside her chest, throbbing with every heartbeat, and each throb whispered the same terrible truth. Rejected, unwanted, not enough, never enough. Elena wrapped a blanket around her daughter's shaking shoulders, then pulled her into her arms the way she had when Kira was small and the other pups were cruel. She rocked her gently, humming an old lullaby, and asked no questions. She didn't need to. A mother knows. He rejected me, Kira finally whispered against Elena's shoulder. Her voice was raw, shredded. My mate. He looked at me and decided I wasn't good enough. Elena's arms tightened. Tell me his name. No. Kira pulled back, wiping uselessly at her tear-stained face. He said if I told anyone, he'd deny it. And he's right. No one would believe me anyway. Why would they? He's He's perfect, Mama. Strong and handsome and high-ranking, and I'm just, her voice cracked. I'm just me. You are my daughter, Elena said fiercely, gripping Kira's face between her palms. You are brilliant, and kind, and plain, Kira interrupted flatly. Weak, unremarkable. That's what he said. Not in those exact words, but that's what he meant. He said I'd make him weaker, that the moon goddess made a mistake. Elena's face went white, then red with fury. The moon goddess does not make mistakes. Then why would she pair me with someone who doesn't want me? The question came out as a wail. Why would she let me feel this bond, let me hope for one perfect moment? And then she couldn't finish. The pain was too big, too consuming. Her mother had no answer. What answer could there be? They sat together by the fire until the embers died, until the night grew cold enough that their breath misted in the air. Then Elena helped Kira to bed, tucked the blankets around her like she was a child, and smoothed her hair back from her forehead. It will get better, Elena whispered, though her eyes said she wasn't sure she believed it. Time heals even this, little one, I promise. But Kira knew better. She'd heard the stories wolves who'd been rejected by their mates, who'd spent years in agony as the bond slowly withered and died inside them. Some went mad. Some wasted away. Some simply stopped, their wolves giving up, their human halves following close behind. She closed her eyes and prayed for sleep to take her. It didn't come. The next 3 days were hell. The visiting packs left at dawn as planned, and Kira stayed hidden in the cabin, claiming illness. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was sick, feverish and shaking, her body rejecting the reality of the broken bond. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat was agony. And the worst part? She could still feel him. The bond hadn't died yet. It stretched between them like a poisoned thread. And even miles away, she sensed his anger, his guilt, his determination to forget her. At night, when she finally managed to fall into fitful sleep, she dreamed of amber eyes and cold rejection, woke gasping and crying and desperately, pathetically hoping it had all been a nightmare. Elena tried everything. Healing teas that tasted of earth and bitterness. Poultices for the phantom pain in Kira's chest. Sleeping draughts that only made the dreams worse. Nothing helped. You need to eat, her mother pleaded on the 3rd day, setting a bowl of stew beside Kira's bed. You've had nothing but water since. I can't. Even the smell made Kira's stomach turn. Mama, please, just let me be. Elena's expression crumpled, but she didn't argue. She simply sat on the edge of the bed, took Kira's hand, and held it while her daughter stared blankly at the ceiling. I need to tell you something, Elena said finally, her voice heavy with old pain. Something I should have told you years ago. Kira turned her head slightly, barely curious. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. Your father, Elena continued, squeezing Kira's hand. He was my mate, my true mate, and he rejected me too. That got Kira's attention. She pushed herself up on her elbows, staring at her mother in shock. What? Elena's smile was sad and crooked. I was 17. He was the alpha's son, destined for leadership, handsome, powerful, everything I'd dreamed of. When the bond snapped into place, I thought the moon goddess had blessed me beyond measure. She paused, her eyes distant. He took one look at me, a healer's apprentice with no rank or beauty, and made the same calculation your mate did. I wasn't good enough. I'd be a liability. Mama. Kira's voice was barely a whisper. I never knew. I never told you. I was ashamed. Foolishly. And I didn't want you to grow up afraid of finding your mate. Didn't want my pain to poison your hope. Elena laughed bitterly. I suppose that backfired spectacularly. What happened? Kira asked. To him, to you. He took a chosen mate, a beautiful, high-ranking she-wolf from a neighboring pack, had 3 strong sons, became alpha, just as he'd planned. Elena's voice was matter-of-fact. But Kira heard the old hurt underneath. The bond faded over time. It took almost 2 years, but eventually, I stopped feeling him. The pain became manageable. And you? I found your stepfather, not a mate bond, but something real nonetheless. We had you. Elena's expression softened. You, my little one, were worth every moment of that pain. You gave my life meaning when I thought I'd never find it again. It should have been comforting. A story of survival, of moving on, of finding happiness despite rejection. But all Kira could think was 2 years. 2 years of this agony before it faded. 2 years of feeling Damien's indifference like a knife in her chest. I don't know if I'm that strong, Mama, she whispered. You are. Elena's voice was fierce, certain. You're my daughter. You're stronger than you know. But Kira wasn't sure she believed that anymore. On the 4th day, Alpha Thorn summoned her. The order came through a young male wolf who knocked on their cabin door just after dawn, his expression carefully neutral. The Alpha requests Kira Ashford's presence in his den. Immediately, Kira's stomach dropped. She exchanged a glance with Elena, whose face had gone pale. She's still unwell. Elena started, but the messenger cut her off. Immediately, he repeated. Alpha's orders. There was no refusing a direct command from the pack Alpha. Kira forced herself out of bed, dressed in a simple tunic and leggings, and followed the messenger through the awakening pack grounds. Wolves stared as she passed, some curious, some pitying, all aware that being summoned by Thorn was rarely a good thing. The Alpha's den was a large cabin near the center of territory, built from dark wood and decorated with trophies from successful hunts. Thorn sat behind a massive desk, his gray eyes cold and assessing as Kira was ushered inside. Leave us, he told the messenger, who bowed and retreated, closing the door with an ominous click. Kira stood before the desk, her head lowered in automatic submission. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to stay still, to wait. You've been hiding, Thorn said conversationally. That's not like you, Kira. Usually you're quite dutiful, always available to heal injuries, mix remedies, serve the pack. But you've been indisposed. I apologize, Alpha. I was ill. You were rejected. He said it casually, as though commenting on the weather. By your mate. During the gathering, the blood drained from Kira's face. I don't know what you... Don't. Thorn's voice cracked like a whip. Don't insult my intelligence. I have eyes, girl. I saw the way you looked at the Iron Ridge Beta's son. I saw the bond snap into place, and I saw him walk away from you like you were nothing. Shame burned hot in Kira's chest. She'd thought they'd been subtle, that no one had noticed. But of course Thorn had noticed. He noticed everything. It's what made him a successful, if cruel, Alpha. It must have been humiliating. Thorn continued, his tone almost sympathetic. Almost. To be rejected so publicly. To have your mate take one look at you and decide you weren't worth the trouble. Tell me, Kira, how does that feel? The question was designed to wound, and it succeeded. Kira's nails dug into her palms, her wolf snarling beneath her skin. With respect, Alpha, why did you summon me? She managed through clenched teeth. Because your situation creates a problem for me. Thorn leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. You see, Iron Ridge is a valuable ally. Strong military force, strategic territory, excellent trade relationships. I've been cultivating a closer alliance with Alpha Blackwood for years. And now his second son has rejected a wolf from my pack. That's not your concern. Everything in this pack is my concern. Thorn's fist slammed down on the desk, making Kira flinch. Do you think Blackwood wants his son's rejection broadcast to every pack in the region? Do you think he wants the gossip, the questions about his son's judgment? Of course not. Which means I need to ensure this stays quiet. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. You want me to deny it. I want you to forget it. Thorn's eyes were hard as flint. You never met your mate. The bond never formed. As far as anyone knows, you've been ill with a normal sickness, nothing more. Do you understand? And if I don't agree? The smile he gave her was cruel. Then I'll have no choice but to exile you from the pack. For spreading malicious lies about an allied Alpha son. For attempting to force a bond that doesn't exist. For being a disruption to pack harmony. He paused, letting that sink in. Your mother, of course, would be welcome to stay. But you'd be declared rogue, no pack, no protection, no territory. How long do you think you'd survive the winter alone? It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Kira felt something inside her crack even further, some last desperate hope that someone, somewhere, might care about her pain. But of course not. She was nothing. Easily sacrificed for political convenience. "I understand, Alpha," she heard herself say. The words tasted like ash. "Good." Thorne's smile widened. "I'm glad we could reach an understanding. You're dismissed." Kira turned to leave, her legs somehow carrying her toward the door, despite the numbness spreading through her body. "Oh, and Kira?" Thorne's voice stopped her at the threshold. "I'd suggest you recover from your illness soon. The pack needs its healer functional. Your feelings are your own problem. Don't let them interfere with your duties again." She didn't trust herself to speak. She simply nodded and fled. The snow started falling that afternoon. Kira walked through it aimlessly, her thin jacket providing little protection against the bitter cold. She didn't care. The physical cold was nothing compared to the ice spreading through her chest, freezing her from the inside out. "Forget it," Thorne had ordered, as though she could simply stop feeling the bond. As though she could erase Damien from her mind by force of will. As though she hadn't already lost everything. She found herself at the northern border without consciously choosing the direction, the same border where she'd first felt the pull toward her mate. The bond was quieter now, muffled by distance and rejection, but it still hummed beneath her skin, still reminded her, with every breath, that somewhere out there was the other half of her soul, the half that didn't want her. "I can't do this," Kira whispered to the falling snow. "Mama, I'm sorry. I can't." 2 years of this pain. 2 years of feeling him, knowing he was alive and well and happy without her. 2 years of being nothing, meaning nothing, mattering to no one. She couldn't survive it. She knew that now with bone-deep certainty. Her wolf stirred, confused and hurt. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Kira thought back, "that maybe being rogue wouldn't be worse than this. Maybe exile would be a mercy. You'll die out there. I'm dying anyway. At least it would be faster." She stood at the border for a long time, watching the snow fall, feeling the cold seep deeper. It would be so easy, just keep walking, cross into no man's territory, become rogue, become nothing. Let the winter take her. At least then the pain would stop. Kira took one step forward, then another, and then she heard it, a howl in the distance, deep and resonant and utterly unfamiliar. Her wolf's head snapped up. What was that? Another howl joined the first, then another, until the air was full of them, not her pack. Not any pack she recognized. The sounds were coming from deeper in the unclaimed territory, the dangerous zone where rogues and ferals roamed. She should turn back. Should retreat to safety. Instead, Kira found herself walking forward, drawn by some instinct she didn't understand. The snow fell harder, the wind picked up, and the cold bit deep into her bones. But she kept going, following the howls, chasing something she couldn't name. Maybe death, maybe meaning, maybe just an end to the agony. The last thing she remembered clearly was the snow beneath her feet turning red, her own blood. She realized distantly, from cuts she hadn't noticed making. Her vision blurred, her legs gave out, and as she fell, as the white world tilted and spun and went dark, Kira felt something strange. The bond flared one last time, bright and sharp and desperate. Then nothing. Chapter 3. The Rogue with Golden Eyes. Warmth. That was the first thing Kira became aware of, unexpected, blessed warmth surrounding her like a cocoon. She tried to open her eyes, but her lids were too heavy, her body too exhausted. Everything felt distant, muffled, as though she were underwater. She should be dead. The thought drifted through her consciousness, without panic or fear. She'd collapsed in the snow, bleeding and broken. The cold should have taken her. The rogues should have found her. By all logic, she should have died alone in the unclaimed territory. But she was warm, and she could hear breathing slow, steady, rhythmic. Not her own. Something else. Someone else. Kira forced her eyes open, blinking against the dim light. At first, she couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. Dark fur, black as midnight, thick and soft, rising and falling with each breath. She was pressed against it, curled into it, her body tucked against a massive frame that radiated heat like a furnace. A wolf. An enormous black wolf. Her wolf stirred sluggishly inside her, confused. Where are we? Who is this? Kira tried to move, to pull away, but her body refused to cooperate. Every muscle ached. Her head throbbed. When she managed to lift one trembling hand, she saw her fingers were still blue-tinged from cold, though feeling was slowly returning in painful tingles. The black wolf shifted, and Kira froze. She'd thought it was asleep, but now she realized it had been watching her, waiting for her to wake. A large head lifted, turned toward her, and she found herself staring into eyes that glowed like molten gold in the darkness. Not amber like Damien's. Pure gold, ancient and knowing and utterly wild. Rogue, her wolf whispered in alarm. Has to be. No pack scent. But rogues were supposed to be mad feral creatures driven insane by isolation, attacking anything that moved. This wolf was perfectly still, perfectly controlled, studying her with an intelligence that made her shiver for reasons that had nothing to do with cold. Kira opened her mouth to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse croak. Her throat was raw, her lips cracked and bleeding. How long had she been unconscious? The black wolf made a low sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Then it moved, carefully extracting itself from around her body. Kira immediately felt the loss of warmth, shivering violently as cold air hit her skin. She was in some kind of den, she realized. A natural cave formation. By the looks of it, rough stone walls. A ceiling high enough that the wolf could stand at full height, which was considerable. The entrance was partially blocked by snow, creating a natural barrier against the wind. Someone had gathered pine boughs to create a makeshift bed, and that's where Kira lay now, her body still wrapped in the tatters of her jacket. The black wolf moved to the cave entrance, paused, then looked back at her. Those golden eyes held a question. Stay, they seemed to say. I'll return. Then it was gone, slipping through the narrow opening and disappearing into what sounded like a raging blizzard outside. Kira lay there, trembling, trying to make sense of what was happening. The mysterious wolf had saved her, kept her alive through the night, shared its body heat, brought her to shelter. But why? Rogues didn't do that. Rogues killed, or ignored, or ran. They didn't rescue dying she-wolves and nurse them back to health. Unless it wasn't a rogue. Then what is it? Her wolf asked nervously. Kira had no answer. She must have dozed off again. Because the next thing she knew, the black wolf was back. Snow dusting its fur, carrying something in its massive jaws. It dropped the object near Kira, a rabbit. Freshly killed. Still warm. Her stomach cramped with sudden vicious hunger. She hadn't eaten in days. But she couldn't shift, didn't have the strength. And she couldn't eat raw meat in her human form, her teeth weren't designed for it. The black wolf seemed to understand her dilemma. It shifted. The transformation was unlike anything Kira had ever seen. Most wolves took several seconds to shift, the change methodical and controlled. This was instantaneous, a blur of shadow and movement, and suddenly a man stood where the wolf had been. Kira's breath caught. He was God's. He was beautiful. Tall, even taller than Damien, with broad shoulders and a powerful build that spoke of raw strength. His skin was bronzed, marked with scars that looked like they'd been earned in battle. Long black hair fell past his shoulders, wild and unbound. But it was his face that held her attention, sharp features, high cheekbones, a strong jaw covered in dark stubble, and those eyes, those impossible golden eyes that seemed to glow even in human form. He was also completely naked, which Kira's exhausted brain took an embarrassingly long moment to process. She averted her gaze quickly, heat flooding her cheeks despite her weakness. The wolf made an amused sound, low and rough. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and resonant, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Modesty. Interesting. Most wolves lose that quickly in pack life. It was the first time anyone had spoken to her in days. Kira's eyes burned with sudden, unexpected tears. Who are you? She managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouched beside the rabbit, and Kira realized he was preparing it for her using claws that hadn't fully retracted to efficiently skin and portion the meat. Within minutes, he'd created strips that even human teeth could manage. He held one out to her. Eat first, questions later. Kira wanted to argue, but her body had other ideas. She took the offered meat with shaking hands and bit into it. The taste was incredible, rich and warm, and exactly what her starving body needed. She devoured the first piece, then another, while the mysterious man watched with those unreadable golden eyes. Slowly, he cautioned when she reached for a third piece. Your stomach needs time to adjust. Too much too fast, and you'll be sick. He was right, of course. Already her stomach was cramping, unused to food after days of nothing. Kira forced herself to slow down, to chew carefully, to let her body remember how to process nourishment. Thank you, she said finally, when she'd eaten enough to quiet the worst of the hunger. For all of this. For saving me. The man tilted his head, studying her. Why were you out there? Alone, unprotected, walking into rogue territory during a blizzard? His tone wasn't accusatory, just curious. Still, Kira felt shame heat her face. What could she say? I was trying to die because my mate rejected me? It sounded pathetic even in her own head. I got lost, she lied. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm sorry if I intruded on your territory. Those golden eyes narrowed slightly. He knew she was lying, but he didn't call her on it. This isn't my territory, he said instead. I'm just passing through. Then why help me? The question burst out before Kira could stop it. You're a rogue, aren't you? You could have just left me. Let the cold take me. It would have been easier. Something flickered across his face, an emotion too quick to catch. Perhaps, but I didn't. Why? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. Because everyone deserves a chance to choose whether they live or die. And you were too far gone to make that choice consciously, so I chose for you. His eyes refocused on her, intense. If you want to die, little wolf, you should at least be awake and aware when you make that decision. The casual way he said it, the acknowledgement that he'd known, that he'd seen through her lie, immediately made Kira's throat tighten. She looked away, unable to hold that knowing golden gaze. I don't want to die, she whispered. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Good. He stood in one fluid motion, unconscious of his nakedness. Then rest. Heal. The storm will pass in a day or two, and then you can return to your pack. The thought of returning to Silverpaw, to Thorn's cold commands and pitying stares, and the constant reminder of her rejection, made Kira's chest tighten. But where else could she go? What about you? She asked. Where will you go? His expression shuddered. That's not your concern. You saved my life. That makes it my concern. Was that amusement in his eyes? Fierce words from someone who can barely sit up? He had a point. Kira was exhausted, her body crying out for more rest. But she forced herself to stay conscious, to keep her eyes open, some instinct warning her that if she fell asleep now, her mysterious savior might disappear. At least tell me your name, she said. Please, I need to know who to thank. He hesitated, and for a moment, Kira thought he'd refuse. Then, Kiran, she repeated, testing the name. It felt old somehow. Powerful. I'm Kira. I know. At her confused expression, he gestured to her jacket, where a small patch bore her pack symbol and her name. You talk in your sleep too. Called for your mother. For someone named Damien. His voice hardened almost imperceptibly on the last name. Your mate? The question felt like a knife between her ribs. Kira looked away. He was supposed to be. Supposed to be. He rejected me. The words came out flat, emotionless. She had no tears left for this. 4 days ago. Looked at me. Decided I wasn't good enough. And walked away. That's why I was. She gestured vaguely at herself. At the cave. At everything. That's why. Silence fell, heavy and uncomfortable. Kira waited for the pity, the platitudes, the awkward attempts at comfort. But Kiran surprised her. Then he's a fool, he said simply. And you're better off without him. Something about the matter-of-fact delivery, no pity, no false comfort, just blunt truth made Kira laugh. It came out broken and slightly hysterical, but it was genuine. I don't feel better off, she admitted. I feel like I'm dying. The bond, it's still there, still pulling, and every second it reminds me that he's out there somewhere, living his life, while I'm... She trailed off, unable to finish. Kieran moved closer, crouched down so they were eye level. Up close, Kira could see the scars that marked his body, claw marks across his chest, bite marks on his shoulder, a particularly nasty one that traced from his collarbone to his hip. Whatever life this man had lived, it had been violent. The bond will fade, he said quietly. It takes time, and it hurts like hell, but it will fade. You'll survive this, Kira. Even when you don't think you can, even when the pain feels infinite, you'll survive. You sound like you know from experience. His jaw tightened. I do. Your mate rejected you too? No. His voice went cold, distant. She died. 3 years ago. Killed by hunters who didn't care that we were sentient, thinking beings. To them, we were just animals to be hunted for sport. The pain in those words was raw, unhealed. Kira's heart clenched in sympathy. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Kieran stood abruptly, turning away. It was a long time ago. I've moved on. But he hadn't. Kira could hear it in his voice, see it in the rigid set of his shoulders. He'd survived his mate's death, yes. But he hadn't moved on. He'd just learned to carry the grief, to function despite it, like she'd have to learn to carry her rejection. The bond, she said softly. When your mate died, did it break immediately? Yes. He didn't turn around. Like a rope snapping. One moment she was there, the next. Nothing. Just silence where she used to be. Does the silence get easier? Finally he looked back at her. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes held an ocean of pain. No. You just get better at living with it. It wasn't the answer Kira had hoped for, but it was honest. And somehow, that honesty was more comforting than any false promise could have been. Rest now, Kieran said, his voice gentling. You need sleep to heal. I'll keep watch. But you need rest too. I'm fine. Rogues don't sleep much anyway. Too dangerous. He moved to the cave entrance, settling into a position where he could watch both her and the world outside. Sleep, little wolf. You're safe here, I promise. And despite everything, despite the strangeness of the situation, despite barely knowing this man, despite every instinct that should have warned her against trusting a rogue, Kira believed him. She let her eyes drift closed. Let exhaustion pull her under. And for the first time in days, she slept without nightmares. When she woke hours later, Kieran had shifted back to his wolf form, and was once again curled around her, lending his warmth to her still healing body. His golden eyes watched her in the darkness, patient and protective. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Kira felt safer than she had in years. Chapter 4. Scars that mirror mine. The storm raged for 3 days. 3 days trapped in the cave with a mysterious rogue who'd saved her life for reasons he refused to explain. 3 days of slowly healing, of eating the rabbits and birds Kieran hunted during brief breaks in the blizzard, of learning to exist in the strange bubble of safety he'd created. 3 days of trying not to think about Damien. It didn't work. The bond was still there, fainter now, muffled by distance and rejection, but present enough to remind her with every breath that somewhere out there, her mate existed without her. Sometimes, in the quiet moments when Kieran was out hunting and she was alone with her thoughts, Kira would press her hand to her chest and wonder if Damien felt it too, the hollow ache, the wrongness of being separated from your other half. Probably not. He'd been so certain, so coldly practical. I'm strong enough to endure it, he'd said, and he probably was. While she wasted away in a cave, he was likely going about his life as planned, courting appropriate she-wolves, securing his position as future beta, forgetting she'd ever existed. You're thinking about him again. Kira jerked, pulled from her spiraling thoughts. Kieran stood at the cave entrance in human form, snow dusting his bare shoulders, a ptarmigan dangling from one hand. He'd stopped bothering with clothes after the first day, practicality trumping modesty when you shifted as often as he did, and Kira had stopped blushing about it. Mostly. How can you tell? She asked, pulling the fur he'd provided taken from his own kills tighter around her shoulders. Your scent changes. Gets bitter. He moved to the fire he'd built, another miracle. Somehow, he'd found dry wood even in the storm, and began preparing the bird with practiced efficiency. Grief has a smell, so does anger. Right now, you're radiating both. Kira looked away. I can't help it. The bond. I know. His voice was surprisingly gentle. But dwelling on it only makes it worse. Trust me. I spent the first year after Mira died, doing nothing but dwelling. It nearly destroyed me. It was the first time he'd said his mate's name aloud. Kira glanced at him, saw the tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched. Even after 3 years, the wound was still raw. What was she like? Kira asked softly. Mira? Kieran was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. Strong, fierce. Had a laugh that could light up the darkest room. A small, sad smile curved his lips. She was a warrior, better fighter than most of the males in our pack, which drove them crazy. Challenged me for dominance 3 times before we discovered the mate bond. He paused, his hands stilling on the bird. She never backed down from anything. Even at the end, when the hunters had her surrounded, she fought. Took 4 of them with her before. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'm sorry, Kira whispered. That's not fair. That's not. She deserved better. We all deserve better than what we get. Kieran resumed his work, his movements mechanical. But the universe doesn't care about fair. It just is. We survive or we don't. Which did you choose? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something flickered in those golden eyes. I'm still deciding. The honesty of it struck Kira silent. Here was this powerful, dangerous male who'd lived 3 years past his mate's death, and he still didn't know if he'd truly chosen survival, or just postponed the alternative. They were more alike than she'd realized. The bird's ready, Kieran said, breaking the heavy moment. He offered her a portion, perfectly cooked over the fire. Eat. You're still too thin. Kira accepted it gratefully. Over the past 3 days, she'd gained back some strength enough to sit up without difficulty, to walk around the cave without stumbling. Kieran's care had been meticulous. Food at regular intervals, water from melted snow, herbal poultices he somehow knew how to make that helped her cuts and bruises heal faster. Where did you learn all this? She asked between bites. The healing, I mean. The herbs and remedies. My mother was a healer. Before, he gestured vaguely. Before everything. She taught me the basics. Said even warriors needed to know how to treat wounds when no healer was available. Did she die too? When the hunters... No. Kieran's voice went flat. She died years before that. Illness. Nothing we could do. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. My father followed 6 months later. Broken heart, they said. I used to think that was romantic bullshit. Then I lost Mira, and I understood. But you didn't die. No, I didn't have the courage. He said it without self-pity, just stating fact. Or maybe I had too much. Hard to say. I just kept going. Left the pack, couldn't stand the pity, the whispers, everyone walking on eggshells around me, became rogue. Been wandering ever since. Kira tried to imagine it, years of solitude, no pack bonds, no home, just endless movement through territories that weren't yours. It sounded like a special kind of hell. Don't you get lonely? Kieran's laugh was harsh. Every single day. But lonely is better than staying somewhere that reminds you of everything you lost. At least out here, the pain is clean. Simple. I don't think pain is ever simple. No, he agreed quietly. I suppose it's not. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the howling wind outside. Kira found herself studying Kieran when he wasn't looking, the way firelight played across his scarred skin, the carefully controlled set of his shoulders, the profound sadness that seemed to emanate from him even when he smiled. He was beautiful and broken, dangerous and gentle, and she had no idea what to make of him. The storm's dying, Kieran said suddenly, tilting his head toward the entrance. Should be clear enough to travel by tomorrow morning. Kira's stomach dropped. Oh, I'll take you back to your pack's border. Make sure you get home safely. He didn't look at her as he said it. His attention fixed on the fire. You'll need to come up with a story, can't tell them you were with a rogue. They'd have questions you don't want to answer. Right. Of course. Kira swallowed hard against the unexpected lump in her throat. She should be relieved, happy to return home, to her mother, to familiar territory, but instead, she felt bereft. What will you tell them happened to me? That you got caught in the storm. took shelter in a cave, survived on your own until the weather cleared. His golden eyes finally met hers. No one needs to know I was here. But you saved my life, which means nothing if telling the truth gets you exiled or worse. Kieran's voice was firm. Your alpha sounds like the type who'd punish you for associating with a rogue, even if you had no choice. Better to lie. He was right, of course. Thorne would absolutely use her encounter with Kieran against her, especially since he'd already threatened exile once. But the thought of pretending the past 3 days hadn't happened, of erasing Kieran from her story entirely, felt wrong. Will I see you again? The question escaped before Kira could stop it. Kieran's expression shuddered. No, that wouldn't be wise. Why not? Because I'm rogue, Kira. No pack, no territory, no place in civilized wolf society. If you're seen with me, it'll raise questions. Cause problems. You don't need more problems right now. What if I don't care about that? You should. His voice hardened. You think your life is difficult now? Try being rogue. Try having every pack you encounter treat you like a disease, like something to be driven off or killed. Try living every day, knowing you don't belong anywhere, that you'll never belong anywhere again. It's not romantic, Kira. It's hell. Then why do you do it? She challenged. If it's so terrible, why not join a new pack? Start over? Because, he cut himself off, jaw clenching. Then, more quietly, because the only pack I ever wanted to belong to is the one Mira was part of, and I can't go back there. Too many memories, too much pain, so I stay rogue, and I survive, and I try not to think about what I've lost. The rawness in his voice made Kira's heart ache. She wanted to comfort him, to offer some words of wisdom or hope, but what could she say? She was barely surviving her own grief. She had no solutions for his. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have pushed. Kieran shook his head. No, it's fine. I'm just not used to talking about it, about her, about any of it. He stood abruptly, moving to the cave entrance. I'm going to check the perimeter, make sure the storm didn't draw any actual ferals to the area. Stay inside. He shifted before she could respond, his body blurring into that massive black wolf, and disappeared into the night. Kira sat alone by the fire, fighting the urge to cry. In 3 days, Kieran had become, what? Not a friend, exactly. They barely knew each other, but something. Someone who understood pain and loss and the terrible weight of surviving when part of you had died. And tomorrow, she'd return to Silverpaw and never see him again. The thought hurt more than it should have. Kieran didn't return for hours. Kira tried to sleep, but anxiety kept her awake. What if he'd encountered ferals? What if he was hurt? What if he decided to just leave? To abandon her here with enough supplies to make it home but without saying goodbye? That last thought bothered her more than the others. Finally, near dawn, she heard movement at the cave entrance. Kieran slipped inside in wolf form, snow clinging to his dark fur. He shook himself, then shifted back to human, and Kira's breath caught. He was bleeding. Not badly shallow cuts along his ribs, a deeper gash on his shoulder but definitely bleeding. And trying to hide it, judging by the way he angled his body to keep the injuries out of her line of sight. What happened? Kira demanded, sitting up. Nothing, just a minor. You're bleeding. That's not nothing. She pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the lingering weakness in her legs. Let me see. I'm fine, Kieran. She used the same firm tone her mother employed when treating stubborn patients. I'm a healer's daughter. I've been training since I was 12. Let me see the wounds. He hesitated, clearly torn between pride and practicality. Finally, he sighed and moved closer to the fire where the light was better. The cuts were from claws another wolf, Kira realized with a chill. You fought something. 3 ferals, Kieran confirmed, his voice casual despite the injuries. Drawn by the storm, like I thought. They're dealt with now. You fought 3 ferals alone. Kira's voice rose. Are you insane? You could have been killed, but I wasn't. He watched her with those unsettling golden eyes as she examined his wounds. I've survived worse. That's not. She cut herself off, forcing calm. Getting angry wouldn't help. Do you have any of the herbs left? The ones you used on my cuts? Some. In the pack by the wall. Kira retrieved the small bundle, recognizing most of the plants immediately. Her mother had taught her well. Working quickly, she made a poultice, her hands steady despite the flutter of nervousness in her stomach. This might sting, she warned. I can handle, Kieran hissed as she applied the mixture to the gash on his shoulder. Gods, woman, what's in that? Yarrow, golden seal, and a few other things. It'll prevent infection and speed healing. She worked carefully, her fingers gentle despite his wince. You need to be more careful. Fighting 3 ferals alone is reckless. I was protecting you. The words hung in the air between them. Kira's hands stilled. You could have just scared them off, she said softly. You didn't have to fight them. Yes, I did. Kieran's voice was quiet but absolute. If I'd just driven them away, they would have circled back. Tracked your scent. I couldn't risk that. Why? The question came out barely louder than a whisper. Why do you care? I'm just some broken she-wolf you found in the snow. You don't owe me anything. He was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because when I found you, you reminded me of myself. 3 years ago, right after Mira died, I wandered into rogue territory. Didn't care if I lived or died, almost hoped something would end it for me. But a rogue found me old male, half mad from isolation. But he still had enough humanity left to drag me to shelter, kept me alive when I didn't want to be alive. And when I was strong enough to leave, he told me something I've never forgotten. What did he tell you? Kieran met her eyes. He said, the universe takes and takes and takes. But sometimes, when you least expect it, it gives you a chance to pass on the kindness someone once showed you. Don't waste it. Kira's throat tightened. So you saved me because someone once saved you. Yes. And because... He hesitated, then continued softly. Because I looked at you lying in the snow, and I saw myself. Broken. Lost. Convinced you weren't worth saving. And I thought, if someone could save me, someone could look at the wreck I was, and decide I deserved to live, then you deserved the same chance. A tear slipped down Kira's cheek before she could stop it. Thank you. For seeing me. For choosing to save me when I couldn't save myself. Kieran reached up, his hand cupping her face, his thumb gently wiping away the tear. The gesture was tender, almost intimate, and Kira's breath caught. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. The fact that you're still here, still breathing, still fighting, that takes courage. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not your alpha, not your pack, and especially not the mate who was too blind to see your worth. More tears came then. But they weren't tears of grief. They were something else, relief, maybe, or gratitude, or the simple release of being seen and valued by someone when she'd felt invisible for so long. Kieran pulled her into his arms, and Kira went without thinking, pressing her face against his bare chest and letting herself cry. He held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, his presence solid and comforting in a way nothing else had been since Damien's rejection. I don't want to go back, she whispered against his skin. I don't want to return to the pack and pretend everything's fine. I don't want to see Thorn's cold eyes or hear the whispers or feel the bond pulling at me every day, reminding me of what I lost. I know. Kieran's voice rumbled through his chest. But you have to. Your mother is there. Your life is there. You can't run from pain, Kira. Believe me, I've tried. It follows you wherever you go. Then what do? You survive, one day at a time, one breath at a time. You let the bond fade slowly. You build a life for yourself that has nothing to do with Damien. And eventually, maybe not soon, but eventually it'll hurt less. He pulled back slightly, tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. And if you ever feel like you can't take another step, like the pain is too much, you remember that you survived this. You survived rejection and grief and nearly freezing to death. You're stronger than you know. Kira wanted to believe him. Wanted to hold on to his words like a lifeline. Will you really never come back? She asked. Will I really never see you again? Kieran's expression was pained. It's better if... I didn't ask what's better. I asked if I'll see you again. He studied her face for a long moment, something complex and unreadable in his golden eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. The northern border of your territory, he said quietly. Where I found you. If you ever need, if things get too difficult, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, go there. At sunset, I'll find you. You'll come? You promise? I promise. His hand was still cupping her face, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on her cheekbone. But don't come unless you truly need to, Kira. Every time we meet, it'll be a risk. For both of us. I understand. She covered his hand with hers. Thank you. For everything. For saving my life. For your kindness. For giving me hope when I thought I had none left. Something shifted in Kieran's expression, something vulnerable and almost afraid. For a moment, Kira thought he might say something important, something that would change everything. But then he stepped back, breaking the contact, and the moment passed. Get some rest, he said, his voice carefully neutral again. We leave at first light. You'll need your strength for the journey home. Kira nodded, though sleep felt impossible now. She lay down on the bed of pine boughs and furs, watching as Kieran shifted back to his wolf form and curled up near the fire. His golden eyes watched her in the darkness, protective and sad. And as she finally drifted off to sleep, Kira realized something that should have terrified her but somehow didn't. She didn't want to say goodbye to him tomorrow. She didn't want to say goodbye at all. Chapter 5. Facing the Pack's Judgment. Dawn broke cold and clear, the storm finally spent. Kira woke to find Kieran already in human form, standing at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the pale morning light. He looked like something out of legend, wild and untamed, belonging more to the forest than civilization. It's time, he said without turning around. The way back will be easier now that the snow's stopped. But we should leave soon. Your pack will be worried. Would they? Kira doubted anyone but her mother had noticed she was gone. To Silverpaw, she was just the healer's quiet daughter. Useful but unremarkable. Easily overlooked. They'd probably assumed she was hiding in the cabin, nursing her illness, not lost in the wilderness, fighting to survive. Still, she pushed herself up, ignoring the protest of muscles still sore from her ordeal. I'm ready. Kieran finally looked at her, and something flickered in those golden eyes. Regret. Maybe. Or reluctance. Are you sure you want to go back? The question surprised her. Where else would I go? Anywhere. Nowhere. He moved closer, his expression serious. You could come with me. Live as rogue. It's hard, and it's lonely, but it's also freedom. No alpha dictating your life, no pack politics, no pretending to be something you're not. For one wild moment, Kira actually considered it. Leaving everything behind, Silverpaw, Thorn, the constant reminder of her rejection, and just disappearing into the wilderness with this mysterious male who'd saved her life. But reality crashed back quickly. I can't. My mother would survive, Kieran interrupted gently. She survived before you were born. She'd survive after. I'm not saying it wouldn't hurt her, but she'd understand. Eventually. You don't know that. No, he admitted. But I know what it's like to stay somewhere out of obligation when your soul is screaming to leave. It eats at you, Kira. Slowly. Until there's nothing left. Is that what happened to you? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, what do you want? Not what you should do. Not what's expected. What do you actually want? Kira opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. What did she want? A week ago, she would have said she wanted her mate to accept her, to love her, to complete the bond. But now? Now she wanted to stop hurting. She wanted to feel valued. She wanted to exist somewhere where her plainness wasn't a liability, where her gentle nature wasn't seen as weakness. She wanted to feel the way she felt in this cave, safe, seen, understood, but she couldn't say that. Not to Kieran, who was offering her an impossible choice just days after saving her life. I want my mother to be happy, she said finally. And she won't be if I disappear. So I go back. At least for now. Kieran nodded slowly, though disappointment shadowed his features. At least for now, he echoed. But remember what I said about the northern border. If things become unbearable, I'll come find you. I know. Kira managed a small smile. You won't get rid of me that easily, Kieran. I don't want to get rid of you at all, he said softly. Then, as if realizing how that sounded, he cleared his throat and turned away. We should go. Shift. It'll be faster, and you'll need all 4 legs for the terrain. Kira obeyed, letting the change take her. Her wolf form felt stronger than it had in days, still not fully healed, but functional. The brown fur that had always seemed so dull now felt appropriate, camouflaged against the winter landscape. Kieran shifted beside her, and Kira had to suppress a whine at the sheer size of him. His wolf form was massive, easily twice her size, all muscle and midnight fur and those glowing golden eyes. He looked like the wolves from old stories, the ones that hunted gods and swallowed moons. He looked like something that should have terrified her. Instead, she felt safe. Follow me, Kieran's voice said in her mind. And Kira startled. Rogues weren't supposed to be able to mind speak. That ability came from pack bonds, from the shared connection between wolves who belonged to the same group. How are you? I'll explain later. For now, just follow. Step where I step. The snow hides dangers. They set off through the winter forest, Kieran leading with confident strides, Kira following close behind. True to his word, he chose their path, carefully avoiding areas where the snow lay too deep, skirting around frozen streams, picking routes that kept them hidden from view. The journey took hours. Kira's legs burned. Her lungs ached from the cold air, but she pushed on. Kieran set a steady pace, neither too fast nor too slow, occasionally glancing back to make sure she was keeping up. You're doing well, he said at one point, approval warm in his mental voice. Most wolves in your condition wouldn't have made it this far. Most wolves haven't had your excellent care, Kira responded, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? Always. How can we mind speak? I thought rogues lost that ability when they left their packs. Kieran was silent for several strides. When he finally answered, his voice was careful. Most do. But I'm different. My wolf is stronger than average. Has been since birth. My alpha thought it meant I'd be pack leader someday. A bitter laugh echoed through the mental link. What makes you different? That, Kieran said firmly, is a story for another time. Look, we're almost to your border. Kira's heart sank even as relief flooded through her exhausted body. Almost home. Almost back to reality. To her mother's worried embrace and Thorn's cold commands, and the hollow ache where her mate bond should have been whole. Almost back to a life that no longer fit. They stopped at the edge of Silverpaw territory, hidden in a thick copse of evergreens. In the distance, Kira could see the familiar landmarks, the twin oaks that marked the eastern border, the old stone marker left by wolves long dead, the faint trails that crisscrossed pack lands. Home. Except it didn't feel like home anymore. Kieran shifted back to human form, and after a moment's hesitation, Kira did the same. They stood facing each other in the cold morning air, both naked as the day they were born, and somehow it felt more intimate than anything they'd shared in the cave. This is where we part, Kieran said, his voice rough. Your pack lands are just beyond those trees. Follow the eastern trail, it'll take you straight to the main den. Tell them you got caught in the storm, took shelter in a cave, rationed what food you had. They'll believe you. And if they don't, then stick to the story anyway. Consistency is key. His golden eyes held hers. Don't mention me, Kira. No matter what. Even if you trust someone completely, especially if you trust them. Secrets have a way of spreading, and you don't need that kind of attention. She nodded, committing his instructions to memory. Then, before she could overthink it, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Kieran went rigid with surprise, but after a moment, his arms came around her too. He was warm and solid and real, and Kira pressed her face against his chest, memorizing the scent of him, pine and snow, and something wild and indefinable. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. I mean it. You saved my life in more ways than one. His arms tightened. You saved mine too. How? I didn't. You reminded me why I'm still alive, Kieran said quietly. 3 years I've been wandering, existing but not really living. Going through the motions because I didn't have the courage to end it but couldn't find a reason to truly continue. And then I found you. And I remembered, his voice caught. I remembered what it feels like to matter to someone, even if just for a few days, even if just as a stranger who offered shelter from a storm. Kira pulled back enough to look up at him. You matter, Kieran. Don't ever think you don't. You're kind and brave and— Don't, he interrupted, but his voice was gentle. Don't make me into something I'm not. I'm just a rogue who got lucky enough to help someone who needed it. You're more than that. To you, maybe. Right now. His hand came up to cup her face, and the gesture was achingly tender. But you'll go back to your life, and I'll go back to mine, and eventually, this will just be a strange memory. The time you almost died and a mysterious wolf saved you. That's not— Kira started to protest, but Kieran shook his head. It is, and it's okay. It has to be okay, because anything else is. He trailed off, conflict clear in his expression. Anything else is complicated, dangerous. Wrong. Why wrong? Because I'm rogue. Because you're dealing with a rejected mate bond. Because we barely know each other. And whatever this is— he gestured between them. It's not real. It's just two broken people finding comfort in shared pain. His words should have hurt, should have felt like another rejection. But Kira saw the lie in them, heard it in the unsteadiness of his voice. Whatever this was between them, it might be complicated and dangerous, but it wasn't nothing. You're scared, she said softly. Karen's jaw tightened. I'm practical. You're scared, she repeated. Of feeling something again. Of caring about someone who might— She hesitated, then forged ahead. Who might leave you. Like Mira did. Mira didn't leave. She was taken. But the result is the same, isn't it? She's gone. And you're still here. And you've spent 3 years making sure you never care about anyone enough to feel that kind of pain again. Kira's hand covered his, still pressed against her cheek. I'm not asking you to love me, Kieran. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. Don't pretend this meant nothing when we both know it meant something. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers. The gesture was intimate, vulnerable, and Kira's eyes drifted closed. You terrify me, Kieran whispered. Because you're right. This did mean something. You mean something. And I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. Just don't disappear. Don't make me promises about the northern border and then never show up. I've had enough people walk away from me. I won't, I promise. He pulled back, and his eyes were fierce. If you come to the border, I'll be there, no matter what. Even if it takes days. Even if it's dangerous, I'll find you. Good. Kira managed a wobbly smile. Because I have a feeling I'm going to need a friend in the coming weeks. A friend. Kieran tested the word, then nodded. Yes. I can be that. I can be your friend. It wasn't everything Kira felt building between them, but it was enough. For now. I should go, she said reluctantly. My mother will be frantic. I know. Go. Kieran stepped back, putting distance between them. Remember the story. Stick to it. And Kira? He waited until she met his eyes. Be careful. You're Alpha, I don't trust him. The way you described him, the threats he made, just be careful. I will. She shifted, letting her wolf take over, and cast one last look at Kieran's human form standing among the trees. He looked lonely already, like a shadow separating from the world. Then she turned and ran toward Silverpaw territory, toward home, toward whatever awaited her there. Elena was indeed frantic. Kira had barely crossed into Packlands when her mother's scent hit her sharp with fear and exhaustion. Following it, Kira found Elena near the Twin Oaks, clearly searching, her human face pale and drawn. Kira! Elena's cry was equal parts relief and anguish. Oh gods, baby. Kira shifted quickly, stumbling into her mother's arms. I'm okay, Mama. I'm okay. Okay? You've been gone for 4 days. 4 days, Kira. I thought— Elena's voice broke. I thought you'd done something terrible, after what happened with your mate. After how devastated you were. I thought— I got lost, Kira interrupted, hating the lie but knowing it was necessary. The storm came up so fast, and I couldn't find my way back. I took shelter in a cave, rationed what little food I had. She pulled back, meeting her mother's eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Elena cupped Kira's face in shaking hands. studying her daughter's features as if memorizing them. "You're thinner. Pale. But..." Her healer's eyes swept over Kira's body. "No major injuries. How did you survive 4 days in that storm?" "The cave was deep, protected, and I got lucky." "Not entirely a lie." "I'm sorry, Mama. I should have been more careful. We need to get you home, get you warm, fed." Elena wrapped an arm around Kira's waist, supporting her. "Can you walk? Or should I call for help?" "I can walk." Kira didn't want more attention than necessary. "Just, let's go slow." They made their way back to the cabin together, Elena keeping up a steady stream of worried chatter how she'd searched for 2 days before the storm made it impossible, how she'd gone to Thorn but he'd refused to send out search parties during the blizzard, how she'd been preparing to venture out again this morning despite the danger. Kira listened with half an ear, most of her attention focused on not revealing anything about Kieran. Every instinct screamed to tell her mother the truth that she'd been saved, cared for, given hope when she'd had none. But Kieran's warnings echoed in her mind. Secrets have a way of spreading. Back in the cabin, Elena fussed over her hot tea, warm broth, clean clothes, medicinal herbs. Kira submitted to all of it, answering her mother's questions with carefully crafted half-truths. "The Alpha will want to see you," Elena said finally, worry creasing her brow. "He was displeased that you disappeared. Said it reflected poorly on the pack to have wolves wandering off during important alliance gatherings. Of course he did. Thorn would find a way to make even her near death about pack politics. "I'll speak with him tomorrow," Kira said, exhaustion pulling at her. "Right now I just want to sleep." "Of course, little one." Elena kissed her forehead. "I'm just so glad you're safe. When I thought I might lose you." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Kira hugged her mother tight. "I'm here. I'm okay. I promise." But as she lay in her own bed that night, clean and warm and safe, Kira stared at the ceiling and wondered if okay was just another lie she'd have to learn to tell. The bond was still there, that hollow ache in her chest reminding her of Damien's rejection, but it felt different now, quieter, less consuming, as though something else had taken up residence beside it, something warm and golden and protective, something that felt suspiciously like hope. Kira pressed her hand to her chest and thought of golden eyes in the darkness, of a black wolf curled around her to keep her warm, of a broken male who'd chosen to save her when he could barely save himself. The northern border, he'd promised. "If you need me, I'll find you." She believed him, and that belief was enough to face whatever came next. Even if what came next was Alpha Thorn's cold interrogation, and the painful reality of rebuilding a life without the mate she'd thought was her destiny. At least now she knew she wasn't entirely alone. Somewhere out there, a rogue wolf with golden eyes was thinking of her too. And somehow, that made all the difference. Chapter 6. Caught between two deaths. Alpha Thorn summoned Kira the next morning, before the sun had fully risen. She'd barely slept. The familiar comfort of her own bed felt strange after 4 days in a cave, and her mind kept circling back to Kieran. Where was he now? Had he traveled far from the border? Was he thinking about her the way she couldn't stop thinking about him? The knock on the cabin door shattered her spiraling thoughts. The same young male from before stood on the threshold, his expression carefully neutral. "The Alpha requests your presence." "Now." Elena's hand tightened on Kira's shoulder. "She's still recovering." "Now," the messenger repeated flatly. Kira squeezed her mother's hand reassuringly. "It's fine, Mama. The sooner I speak with him, the sooner this is over." But as she followed the messenger through the early morning mist, dread settled heavy in her stomach. Something about this summons felt different from the last one, more urgent, more dangerous. Thorn wasn't alone in his den this time. 3 other males stood with him: Marcus Steele, the pack's head warrior, Garrett Cross, Thorn's beta, and someone Kira didn't recognize. A stranger, though his bearings screamed authority, high-ranking wolf from another pack, judging by his expensive clothes and the way even Thorn seemed deferential around him. "Ah, Kira." Thorn's smile didn't reach his cold gray eyes. "So glad you could join us. I was just explaining your adventure to our guest." Kira's stomach dropped. She kept her head lowered respectfully, her wolf instinctively trying to make herself smaller in the presence of so many dominant males. "Alpha." This is Alpha Cain Blackwood, Thorn continued, and Kira's blood turned to ice. From Iron Ridge Pack. Perhaps you remember his delegation from the Alliance gathering? Blackwood, Damien's father. The Alpha whose second son had rejected her and whose alliance Thorn desperately wanted to maintain. I don't believe we were formally introduced, Kira managed, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. Cain Blackwood studied her with sharp amber eyes so like his son's it hurt to look at. No, we weren't. But I'm told you disappeared during the gathering. Got lost in the storm. Quite concerning, especially with all the recent rogue activity in the region. There was something in his tone, a weight to his words that made Kira's skin prickle with warning. I made a foolish mistake, she said carefully. I wandered too far from Packlands and couldn't find my way back before the storm hit. I took shelter in a cave and waited it out. I'm fortunate to have survived. Indeed. Cain's gaze was penetrating, as though he could see through her lies to the truth beneath. Fortunate, though I have to wander a she-wolf alone, unprotected, in rogue territory for 4 days. Most wouldn't survive even one night. Yet you emerged relatively unscathed. How do you explain that? It was a trap. Kira could feel it closing around her like jaws. The cave was well hidden, she said, deep enough that my scent wouldn't carry. And I know herbs, my mother's a healer. I used what I could find to mask my presence. Impressive. Cain's tone suggested he found it anything but believable. And you saw no other wolves during this time? No rogues? No ferals? None that came close enough to threaten me. How convenient. The silence that followed was suffocating. Thorn watched her with an expression she couldn't read. Marcus's hand rested casually on the knife at his belt. Garrett's eyes held open suspicion. Finally, Cain spoke again. The reason I'm here, Kira, is that we've had reports of a particularly dangerous rogue in this region. Large black wolf, extremely aggressive, has attacked several of our border patrols over the past few months. We believe he was in the area during the storm. His tracks were found not far from where you claim to have taken shelter. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. Kieran. They were talking about Kieran. I didn't see any black wolf, she said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. She'd seen him, yes, but not as the aggressive threat they described. As I said, the cave was hidden. Deep. Yes, you mentioned. Cain took a step closer, and Kira had to fight every instinct not to retreat. Let me be direct, girl. I don't believe your story. 4 days alone in hostile territory, during the worst storm we've seen in years, and you emerge with barely a scratch? No, someone helped you. And given the presence of that black rogue, given the timing, I think we both know who. I don't know what you're. Don't lie to an alpha. Cain's voice cracked like a whip, and Kira flinched. His dominance rolled over her in waves, making her wolf whimper and cower. You were with the rogue. Admit it. I wasn't. Kira. Thorn's voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. Alpha Blackwood has come a long way to investigate this matter. The rogue in question is wanted for questioning, in connection with several crimes, theft, assault, possibly worse. If you helped him, even unknowingly, you could be held accountable. But if you cooperate, tell us what you know, we can be lenient. It was the same tactic he'd used before, threats wrapped in false kindness. But this time, it wasn't just about pack politics. This time, they were hunting Kieran, and they wanted her to help. I'm telling the truth, Kira said firmly, meeting Thorn's eyes despite the fear coursing through her. I was alone in that cave. I saw no other wolves, rogue or otherwise. If you don't believe me, I don't know what else to say. Cain's expression hardened. Marcus, show her. The head warrior moved forward, pulling something from his jacket, a piece of cloth torn, stained with blood, Kira's blood. She realized with growing horror. From the jacket she'd been wearing when she collapsed. We found this near the cave you described, Marcus said, his voice professionally neutral. Along with tracks, human and wolf. 2 sets. Your scent, and one we don't recognize. So unless you want to claim you were hallucinating a second person, you were with someone. And the timeline matches perfectly with the rogue's known movements. They'd tracked her. Followed her trail back to the cave. Found evidence of Kieran's presence. And now they were using it to force a confession. Kira's mind raced. She could continue to deny it, but they clearly had enough evidence to doubt her story. Or she could admit to meeting someone but claim ignorance about his identity, his nature, anything that might protect him. There was someone, she said finally, and watched satisfaction flash across Kane's face. But I don't know who he was. I was half frozen, delirious. He appeared, gave me shelter, and disappeared again, before I could even thank him properly. I never got his name. Never even saw his human form clearly. You're telling me you spent 4 days with someone and never learned anything about them, Garrett scoffed. Do you think we're idiots? I'm telling you I was barely conscious most of that time. Kira's voice rose, frustration bleeding through despite her attempts at control. I was dying. Whoever saved me kept me alive, but I was in and out of awareness. When I woke fully, he was gone. That's the truth. But he was a rogue. Kane made it a statement, not a question. Kira hesitated too long. I thought so. Kane's smile was predatory. Here's what's going to happen, girl. You're going to tell us everything you remember about this rogue, his size, his coloring, any distinctive markings, the location of the cave, everything. And then you're going to help us find him. I can't. You can, and you will. Kane's dominance flared again, forcing Kira to her knees. She gasped at the pressure, her wolf whining in submission. That rogue is dangerous. He's killed pack wolves, disrupted our borders, threatened our security. If you're protecting him, you're complicit in his crimes. Is that what you want? To be branded a traitor? To bring shame on your mother, your pack? Kira's hands clenched into fists. Every word was designed to manipulate, to corner her into betrayal. But beneath the fear and anger, a stubborn core of resistance held firm. Kieran had saved her life, had shown her kindness when she'd had nothing, had given her hope when she wanted to die. She wouldn't betray him, not for Thorn, not for Kane Blackwood, not even to save herself. He wasn't dangerous, she said quietly, still on her knees but meeting Kane's eyes. Not to me. He saved my life when he could have left me to die. Whatever crimes you think he committed, I can't help you find him. I won't. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You're refusing a direct order from an alpha. Kane's voice was dangerously soft. I'm telling you I don't have the information you want. Even if I did. Kira swallowed hard. I wouldn't use it to lead you to someone who showed me mercy when I needed it most. Mercy? Garrett laughed harshly. Rogues don't show mercy. They're feral, broken creatures who... He wasn't feral. Kira's voice was steady now. Certain. He was kind. Gentle. More human than any wolf I've met in Packlands. The words hung in the air, and too late, Kira realized her mistake. She'd revealed too much her knowledge of his character, her defense of him, her obvious connection to someone she claimed to barely remember. Thorn's expression shifted to something calculating. You care about him. It wasn't a question. I'm grateful to him. Kira corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Thorn exchanged a glance with Kane. Because to me it sounds like you formed an attachment to this rogue. Spent 4 days in close quarters with him. Maybe more than just gratitude developed. Kira's cheeks burned. Nothing happened. I don't care if something happened or not. Kane cut her off. What I care about is that you clearly know more than you're telling. And if you won't voluntarily share that information, we have other methods of encouragement. You can't, Kira started, but Marcus's hand on her shoulder silenced her. Actually, we can, Thorn said smoothly. You're a member of my pack, which means you're subject to pack law. And pack law says that any wolf who aids a rogue can be punished accordingly. Exile, imprisonment, even execution if the crime is severe enough. I didn't aid him, he aided me, a distinction without a difference. Kane moved closer, looming over her kneeling form. Here's your choice, girl. Either you help us track this rogue, or you face charges of collaboration with a known criminal. Your mother, I'm told, is quite beloved in this pack. It would be a shame if her daughter's actions reflected poorly on her. Perhaps cost her the position she's worked so hard to maintain. And there it was, the true threat. Not just against Kira, but against Elena. They'd use her mother to force compliance, to break her resistance. Kira's vision blurred with rage and helplessness. You can't punish her for my choices. I can do whatever I want. I'm alpha here. Thorn's voice was cold. So decide, Kira. Help us find the rogue, or watch your mother suffer the consequences of your misplaced loyalty. The walls were closing in. Every option led to betrayal of Kieran, of her mother, of herself. There was no winning this. No clever words that would free her from the trap they'd laid. I need time, Kira said desperately. To think. You have until sunset tomorrow. Kane straightened, his decision made. After that we proceed with charges. And trust me, girl, you won't like what comes next. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Kira? Don't even think about running. We'll be watching you. And if you somehow manage to warn your rogue friend? His smile was cruel. We'll kill your mother. Slowly, while you watch. Do you understand? Kira understood perfectly. She was trapped, caught between protecting the male who'd saved her and protecting the mother who'd raised her. No matter what she chose, someone she cared about would pay the price. Get her out of here, Thorn ordered Marcus, and make sure she understands this isn't a negotiation. It's a command. Marcus hauled Kira to her feet and escorted her from the den. She walked on numb legs, her mind spinning, trying desperately to find a solution that didn't exist. By the time she reached the cabin, one thing was crystal clear. She had less than 48 hours to figure out how to save everyone she loved, or watch them all burn. Chapter 7. The Midnight Escape. Elena knew something was wrong the moment Kira walked through the door. What did he say? Her mother asked, setting down the herbs she'd been grinding. Baby, what happened? Kira couldn't speak, couldn't form words around the panic choking her throat. She stood frozen in the doorway, trembling, her mind replaying Kane's threat over and over. We'll kill your mother. Slowly. While you watch. Kira. Elena's hands cupped her face, forcing eye contact. Talk to me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. You can't. The words came out broken. You can't help with this, Mama. No one can. She pulled away, moving to the window, staring out at the forest beyond. Somewhere out there, Kieran was living his solitary existence, unaware that he'd been marked for death, that she'd been given an impossible choice: betray him or watch her mother die. Tell me anyway, Elena said softly. Please, I can't help if I don't know what we're facing. And maybe it was the exhaustion, or the fear, or the simple need to share the burden with someone who loved her, but Kira broke. The story poured out, finding Kieran, the cave, his gentleness and care, the promise to meet at the northern border. And then Thorn's trap, Kane's accusations, the ultimatum that left her no way out. Elena listened in silence, her expression shifting from shock to anger to something that looked like resignation. The rogue who saved you, she said when Kira finally fell quiet. You care about him. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Elena's gaze was knowing, maternal. You care about him, don't you? Kira closed her eyes. Yes. I don't know why, or how, but yes. He understood my pain in a way no one else could. He saw me, Mama. Really saw me. Not the plain healer's daughter, not the rejected mate, just me. And he decided I was worth saving. And now they want you to lead them to him so they can kill him. Yes. The word tasted like poison. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her healer's hands absently sorting through dried lavender. When your father rejected me, she said finally, I wanted to die. The pain was unbearable. But my mother told me something I've never forgotten. The measure of a person isn't in how they're loved, but in how they choose to love others despite their own pain. You could betray this, Kieran, to save yourself, to save me. It would be the practical choice, the safe choice. But you'd never forgive yourself. And neither would I. Elena met her daughter's eyes. I didn't raise you to sacrifice good people to save your own skin, Kira, even if that person is me. Tears burned in Kira's eyes. I can't just let them kill you, and I can't let you become the kind of wolf who betrays those who showed her kindness. Elena moved closer, taking Kira's hands. There has to be another way. We just need to find it. There is no other way. They're watching me. If I try to run, they'll know. If I try to warn Kieran, they'll know. And if I do nothing, they'll charge me with collaboration and... Kira's voice cracked. They'll hurt you to punish me. Then, we don't run. And we don't do nothing. Elena's expression turned, calculating the same look she got when facing a particularly difficult healing case. We fight smart. How? We have no allies. No power. No. We have knowledge they don't have. Elena squeezed Kira's hands. They think this rogue is a violent criminal. But you know he's not. You know where to find him, how to reach him. That's leverage. Leverage for what? For getting him away from here before Kane's hunters find him. Elena began to pace, her mind clearly working through possibilities. If Kieran's not in the territory, they can't catch him. They can accuse you of whatever they want, but without evidence, without the actual rogue to prove their case, it all falls apart. Kira stared at her mother. You want me to warn him, to tell him to run. I want you to save an innocent life, yes. Elena stopped pacing, her expression fierce. They'll be watching you during the day, expecting you to lead them to him. But at night, when the pack is sleeping, you could slip out, get to the northern border. They said they'd be watching. During the day, when you might try something obvious. But I know herbs, baby. I can make something that will make you appear ill, feverish, delirious. They'll believe you're too sick to try anything. And while they're convinced you're bedridden, Elena's smile was grim. You'll be warning your rogue to disappear. It was insane. Risky. Could get them both killed if anything went wrong. It was also their only chance. What about you? Kira asked. If I disappear for even a few hours and they find out, I'm a respected healer. I've been with this pack for 30 years. They won't kill me without proof of wrongdoing. Elena's voice was confident, but Kira heard the thread of fear underneath. And even if they suspect, even if they question me, I can claim ignorance. Say you slipped out while I was sleeping. They'll be angry, but they'll have no choice but to believe me. Mama, this is the only way, Kira. You know it is. Elena pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. That male saved your life, gave you hope when you had none. We don't repay that kind of debt with betrayal. We repay it by giving him the same chance he gave you a chance to survive. Kira buried her face in her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of herbs and home. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you careful. But don't let it paralyze you. Elena pulled back, cupping Kira's face. You're stronger than you know, little one. You survived rejection. You survived the storm. You'll survive this too. Promise? Elena's smile was sad. I promise to do everything in my power to make sure you do. It wasn't the reassurance Kira wanted, but it was the only one her mother could honestly give. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Elena mixed a concoction that would make Kira appear feverish without actually harming her flushed cheeks, elevated temperature, weakness in the limbs. She'd take it just before sunset, ensuring that any watchers would see her collapse into bed, too ill to move. Then, once full dark fell, and the pack settled in for the night, Kira would slip out through the back window, make her way to the northern border, and pray that Kieran kept his promise to find her. What will I tell him? Kira asked, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The truth. That he's been identified. That hunters are coming. That he needs to leave this region immediately. Elena pressed a small pouch into Kira's hands. Take this. Herbs to mask your scent, in case they have trackers following you. Use them sparingly, but use them. Kira tucked the pouch into her pocket, her hands shaking. What if I can't find him? What if he's not there? He'll be there. You said he promised, didn't you? Elena's voice was certain. He doesn't strike me as a male who breaks his promises. No, Kieran wouldn't break his word. If Kira went to the northern border, he'd find her. She had to believe that. As twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Kira drank her mother's potion. Within minutes, her skin flushed hot, her limbs grew heavy, and dizziness made the world tilt and spin. She let Elena guide her to bed, let her mother fuss over her with worried tones loud enough to be heard by anyone listening outside. Rest, baby, Elena said, her voice carrying. The fever should break by morning. I'll stay with you through the night. But once the door was closed, once Elena was certain no one was watching too closely, she leaned close to Kira's ear and whispered, 3 hours. Wait 3 hours after full dark, then go. I'll cover for you. Kira nodded weakly, already committing herself to the plan. The longest 3 hours of her life followed. She lay in bed, feigning sleep, listening to the sounds of the pack settling in for the night. Elena moved around the cabin, deliberately making noise, grinding herbs, stoking the fire, humming old lullabies, creating the illusion of a normal evening. But every sound outside made Kira's heart race. Every footstep, every distant voice, every creak of wood could be hunters coming to drag her away before she could warn Kieran. Please, she prayed to the moon goddess who'd given her a mate that didn't want her. Please let this work. I don't ask for myself. But please don't let them die because of me. When Elena finally gave the signal, 3 soft taps on the bedpost, Kira moved. The fever-mimicking effects of the potion had mostly faded, leaving her clear-headed but still appearing flushed and weak. She slipped out of bed, dressed in dark clothes that would blend with the night, and moved to the back window. Be careful, Elena whispered, embracing her one last time. And Kira? If things go wrong? If you have to choose between coming back and staying safe, stay safe. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. I've lived my life. You haven't even started yours. Mama, promise me. Kira couldn't promise that. Couldn't imagine a world where she saved herself at her mother's expense. But she nodded anyway, because Elena needed to believe her daughter would survive this. Then she climbed through the window and disappeared into the night. The forest was dark and treacherous, every shadow potentially hiding a watcher. Kira used the herbs Elena had given her, rubbing them on her skin and clothes, masking her scent with the smell of earth and pine. She moved carefully, avoiding main paths, sticking to areas where the undergrowth was thick enough to hide her passage. It took nearly an hour to reach the northern border. When she finally arrived at the spot where Kieran had found her dying in the snow, Kira's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. What if he wasn't here? What if something had happened to him? What if she'd risked everything for nothing? She stood in the moonlit clearing, suddenly unsure. Should she call out, shift and howl, wait in silence and hope he sensed her presence? The decision was made for her. A massive black shape materialized from the darkness, so sudden and silent that Kira gasped. Kieran's wolf form was even more imposing at night, his golden eyes glowing like twin flames in the darkness. Kira? His mental voice was confused, concerned. What are you doing here? Is something wrong? She shifted quickly, needing her human voice for this. Everything's wrong, Kieran, you have to leave, now, tonight. He shifted as well, and suddenly they were standing face to face in the moonlight, both naked, both breathing hard. What happened? They know about you, about us. The words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Damien's father, Alpha Cain, he's here. They tracked us back to the cave, found evidence that I wasn't alone. They're calling you a dangerous criminal, saying you've attacked pack wolves, committed crimes, and they want me to lead them to you so they can kill me. Kieran's voice was flat. Of course they do. This isn't a joke. Kira grabbed his arms, needing him to understand the urgency. They gave me until tomorrow sunset to cooperate. If I don't, they'll charge me with collaboration and hurt my mother to punish me. But if I do cooperate, if I lead them here, they'll kill you, Kieran. They have hunters, trackers, probably weapons designed specifically for taking down rogues. You can't fight them all, so you risked everything to warn me. Something soft entered his expression. Kira, don't. She shook her head. Don't thank me. Don't tell me it was foolish. Just promise me you'll leave. Go far from here, somewhere they'll never find you. Start over in a new territory. Please. Kieran was silent, his golden eyes searching her face. Then, slowly, he raised one hand to cup her cheek, the same tender gesture he'd made before they parted. And what happens to you? He asked quietly. If I disappear, if they can't find me, they'll still blame you. Still punish you. I'll survive. Like I'm surviving? His thumb traced gentle patterns on her cheekbone. Alone. Wandering. Existing but not living. That's what you're condemning yourself to, Kira. Is that really what you want? I want you alive. The confession burst out before she could stop it. I want you safe. I don't care what happens to me as long as I'm okay. Kieran finished, his voice rough with emotion. You foolish, brave, impossible woman. Then he kissed her. It was nothing like Kira had imagined a first kiss would be, not gentle or tentative or sweet. It was desperate and hungry, and filled with all the fear and anger and impossible feelings that had been building between them. His hands tangled in her hair, pulled her closer, and she went willingly, pressing against him as though she could somehow merge their bodies into one. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Kira realized she was crying. "I can't lose you," she whispered against his lips. "I just found you. I can't." "Then come with me." The words hung between them, impossible and tempting. "What?" "Come with me," Kieran repeated, his forehead pressed against hers. "Leave the pack. Leave your alpha and his threats. We'll go together, find somewhere safe. You said it yourself, if you stay, they'll punish you anyway. At least this way, you won't be alone." It was everything Kira wanted and everything she couldn't have. "My mother will understand. She'd want you safe, Kira. She'd want you happy, not trapped in a pack that sees you as expendable. But what kind of life would we have? Two rogues, running forever, always looking over our shoulders. A life where we're together." Kieran's voice was fierce. "A life where you're not constantly reminded of the mate who rejected you. Where I'm not drowning in memories of everything I lost. We could start over, Kira. Both of us. Build something new." She wanted to say yes. Wanted it so badly her chest ached with longing. "But they'll hunt us. Both of us. Kane won't let this go, and Thorn can't afford to look weak by letting me escape unpunished. Let them hunt." Kieran's smile was predatory. "I've been evading hunters for 3 years. I know how to disappear. And with 2 of us, we'll be even harder to track. Kieran, say yes." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Say you'll come with me. Say you'll choose yourself for once instead of everyone else's expectations." And maybe it was the kiss, or the moonlight, or the simple desperate need to feel wanted by someone, but Kira found herself nodding. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll come with you." Chapter 8. The Price of Freedom. "We leave now," Kieran said, his voice urgent. "Before anyone realizes you're gone." Kira's mind spun with the enormity of what she'd just agreed to. Leave everything, her mother, her home, the only life she'd ever known. Become rogue. Become hunted. Become free. "I need to say goodbye," she said. "To my mother. I can't just disappear without." "You can and you will." Kieran's grip on her arms tightened. "Kira, if you go back now, they'll know something's wrong. They'll question you, watch you even more closely. We'll lose our window. But she'll think I'm dead. She'll blame herself, think she failed to protect me. She'll think you made a choice." Kieran's voice gentled slightly. "And eventually, when the immediate danger passes, you can send word. Let her know you're alive and safe. But right now, tonight, going back would be suicide for both of us." He was right. Logically, Kira knew he was right. But the thought of Elena waking tomorrow to find her daughter gone, of never explaining, never easing the worry and fear, it felt like another kind of betrayal. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. But sometimes there are no good choices. Only less terrible ones." Kieran pulled her close, his warmth surrounding her in the cold night air. "Your mother is strong. She'll survive this, and she'll understand. Eventually. Trust me." Kira wanted to trust him. Wanted to believe that everything would somehow work out. But doubt gnawed at her, whispering cruel possibilities. What if Elena is punished for your escape? What if Thorn takes his rage out on her? What if you're trading her life for your freedom? "Hey." Kieran tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his golden eyes. "I can see you spiraling. Stop. We'll figure this out together, I promise. But right now, we need to move. Every second we stand here talking is a second they could discover you're gone." He was right. Again. Kira took a deep breath, trying to center herself, to push past the fear and guilt to the determination underneath. "Where will we go?" she asked. "North. Deep into the unclaimed territories where pack patrols rarely venture. I know places, old dens, hidden valleys, caves that most wolves have forgotten exist. We'll stay mobile for the first few weeks, make ourselves impossible to track. Then, once we're sure we've lost any pursuit, we'll find somewhere more permanent. And after that?" Kieran's smile was crooked. "After that? We figure out how to build a life worth living. Together." It should have sounded naive, impossibly optimistic. But something in his voice, a quiet certainty, a bone-deep conviction, made Kira believe him. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." They shifted together, their wolves emerging in a blur of transformation. Kira's brown wolf looked small and plain next to Kieran's massive black form, but when his golden eyes met hers, she felt anything but insignificant. "Stay close," he said through their mysterious mental link. "Follow my lead. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't question. Don't hesitate. Understood? Understood. Good." There was approval in his mental voice, warm and steadying. "You're going to be fine, Kira. I won't let anything happen to you." They ran. Through the dark forest, under the pale moon, away from everything Kira had ever known. Kieran set a punishing pace faster than she'd ever run before, but somehow she kept up. Fear and adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed, pushed her past exhaustion to something almost euphoric. This was what freedom felt like. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. They ran for hours, pausing only briefly to drink from icy streams or catch their breath. Kieran chose their path with obvious expertise, avoiding clearings where they'd be exposed, sticking to rocky ground that wouldn't hold their scent, doubling back occasionally to confuse any potential trackers. "You've done this before," Kira observed as they navigated through a particularly treacherous ravine. "Many times." Kieran's mental voice was grim. "Being rogue means always being ready to run. You learn quickly or you die." Cheerful thought, but honest. He glanced back at her, his golden eyes glowing in the darkness. "The rogue life isn't romantic, Kira. It's hard and lonely and dangerous. If you're having second thoughts, I'm not." And she wasn't. Yes, she was terrified. Yes, she missed her mother with an ache that threatened to consume her. But for the first time in weeks, she felt like she was choosing her own path rather than having one forced upon her. "I'm with you. Wherever this leads." Something warm flooded through the mental link: gratitude, relief, and something deeper that Kieran didn't put into words. By the time dawn broke, they were miles from Silverpaw territory, deep in regions Kira had never explored. The landscape had changed: fewer pine forests, more rocky outcroppings and steep valleys. Dangerous terrain for most wolves, but perfect for hiding. Kieran finally slowed, leading them to a small cave tucked behind a waterfall. The sound of rushing water would mask their scents and any noise they made. Inside, the cave was dry and surprisingly spacious, with evidence of previous occupation: old fire pit, scattered bones from past meals. "You've been here before," Kira observed as they both shifted to human form. "Once. About a year ago." Kieran moved to check the cave's depths, ensuring they were truly alone. "It's a good temporary shelter, hidden, defensible, with water and game nearby. We'll rest here for a few days while I figure out our next move." Kira sank down against the cave wall, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Every muscle ached. Her paws' feet now were raw and bleeding from the punishing run. But they'd made it. They'd actually escaped. "Here." Kieran knelt beside her, examining her injuries with a healer's eye. "You pushed yourself too hard. These cuts need treatment." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." His tone left no room for argument. "Wait here. I'll find something to help." He shifted and disappeared from the cave before Kira could protest. She sat in the dim morning light filtering through the waterfall, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. She'd betrayed her pack, abandoned her mother, thrown away her entire life to run away with a male she barely knew. And somehow, she didn't regret it. The bond with Damien was still there, that hollow ache in her chest, reminding her of his rejection. But it felt distant now, overshadowed by something new and fragile and terrifying. Whatever was growing between her and Kieran, it wasn't a mate bond. Couldn't be. The moon goddess only gave one destined mate per lifetime. But it felt real. Felt right in a way nothing else had since her world fell apart. Kieran returned quickly, carrying plants Kira recognized immediately: yarrow, comfrey, some moss that worked well for wounds. He shifted back to human and began preparing a poultice with practiced efficiency. "You really did learn from your mother," Kira observed. "Had to. Can't exactly visit pack healers when you're rogue." He applied the mixture to her feet with gentle hands. "This'll sting." It did, but Kira bit back any complaint. The pain was nothing compared to what she'd already endured. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything. For helping me escape. Don't thank me yet." Kieran's voice was serious. "We're not safe, Kira. We won't be safe for a long time. They'll send trackers. Maybe hunters. Cain Blackwood doesn't strike me as someone who accepts defeat easily. I know. But at least we're together. At least I'm not facing this alone." Kieran's hands stilled on her feet. He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his golden eyes made her breath catch. "Why did you really come with me? Was it just to escape punishment? Or was there another reason?" Kira's heart hammered. This was the moment for honesty, the kind of raw, vulnerable truth that could either bring them closer or shatter the fragile connection between them. "You make me feel seen," she said quietly. "In a world where I've always been invisible, you looked at me and saw someone worth saving, worth protecting, she swallowed hard. "Worth caring about. I know it's fast, I know it's probably foolish, but I feel safer with you than I ever felt in my own pack. And I didn't want to lose that. Didn't want to lose you." Silence fell, heavy and expectant. Kieran finished treating her wounds, then sat back on his heels, studying her face as though memorizing every feature. "I'm falling for you," he said finally, the words rough and unpracticed. "I know I shouldn't. It's too soon. Too complicated. You're dealing with mate rejection. I'm still grieving Mira, and we're both running for our lives. But I can't help it. When I'm with you, I feel less broken, less alone. And that terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" "Because everyone I've ever cared about has been taken from me." His voice cracked slightly. "My parents, Mira, my pack. What if the universe decides you're next? What if caring about you means losing you?" Kira reached out, cupping his scarred face between her hands. "Then we'll have whatever time we get. However long or short. And we'll make it matter. That simple? That simple." Kieran closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "You're too brave for your own good, you know that?" says the rogue who's been surviving alone for 3 years. "That's not bravery, that's stubbornness." He opened his eyes, and a small smile played at his lips. "But maybe together, we can turn stubbornness into something better." "Like what?" "Like hope." He pressed his forehead against hers, the gesture now familiar and comforting. "Like a future worth fighting for." Before Kira could respond, Kieran tensed. His head snapped toward the cave entrance, every muscle going rigid with alarm. "What?" Kira started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Someone's coming," he said through the mental link. Multiple wolves, moving fast. Terror flooded through her. "Already? How did they find us so quickly?" "Doesn't matter." Kieran was already moving, gathering the few supplies they had. "We need to go. Now. But I can barely walk." "Then I'll carry you." He shifted mid-sentence, his massive black wolf form filling the cave. "Climb on. Hurry." Kira had never ridden another wolf before. It went against every instinct, every rule of pack dynamics. But desperation trumped propriety. She shifted, then carefully climbed onto Kieran's broad back, gripping his fur with her teeth and claws to stay balanced. "Hold tight," he warned. Then they were moving, bursting from the cave entrance into the morning light. Immediately, howls erupted behind them, pursuit, closing fast. Kira caught glimpses through the spray of the waterfall. 5 wolves, all larger than her, all moving with the coordinated precision of trained hunters. "They brought trackers." Kieran's voice was tight with anger and fear. "Must have followed our scent from the border. Damn it, I should have been more careful." "It's not your fault." "Yes, it is. I let emotion cloud my judgment." He pushed harder, his powerful legs eating up the ground. "But we're not caught yet." They ran through territory that grew increasingly hostile. Steep cliffs, narrow ledges, areas where one wrong step would mean a fatal fall. The trackers behind them were skilled, but Kieran had the advantage of desperation and intimate knowledge of rogue survival tactics. He led them through a series of switchbacks that left their pursuers confused and frustrated, doubled back through a stream to break their scent trail, used every trick he'd learned in 3 years of evading pack wolves, but the trackers were persistent. Every time Kieran thought they'd lost them, new howls would erupt, closer than before. They're hurting us, Kira realized with growing horror. Driving us toward something. I know. Kieran's mental voice was grim. There's a canyon ahead, only one way through. If they've blocked the exit, we're trapped. So we don't go through the canyon. We find another route. There is no other route, not unless we want to spend hours backtracking, and we don't have hours. He slowed slightly, his sides heaving with exertion. We're going to have to fight our way through. You can't fight 5 wolves while carrying me, then get ready to run on your own. Kieran's voice held no room for argument. I'll hold them off, buy you time. No. Kira's mental voice was fierce. We stay together, we fight together. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for me. Kira. No. She dug her claws in slightly, making her point. You promised we'd figure this out together. That means no heroic sacrifices, no leaving each other behind. We survive together, or not at all. Kieran made a sound somewhere between a growl and a laugh. Stubborn woman. You said that was a good thing. I'm reconsidering. They reached the canyon entrance, and Kira's heart sank. Just as Kieran had predicted, 2 wolves blocked the narrow passage, large males with the disciplined bearing of professional hunters. Behind them, the original 5 trackers were closing in fast, 7 against 2. And one of the 2 was already exhausted and injured. The odds were impossible. Last chance, Kieran said, his voice tight. You can surrender. Tell them I forced you, that you were an unwilling captive. They might show mercy. Mercy from Thorn and Cain? Not likely. Kira slid off his back, standing on trembling legs beside him. Besides, I meant what I said. Together, then together it is. The hunters surrounded them, forming a loose circle. One of them, a scarred gray wolf with cold eyes, shifted to human form. Kieran the rogue, he said, his voice carrying across the canyon. You're wanted for questioning regarding multiple attacks on pack wolves. Surrender peacefully, and your companion won't be harmed. Liar, Kieran growled, the sound rumbling through both his chest and the mental link. You'll kill me and drag her back in chains. I know how this works. The gray wolf shrugged. Perhaps. But those are your only options. Surrender or die fighting. Either way, you're not leaving this canyon. Kira's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Some trick, some strategy they'd missed. She looked around desperately. Steep canyon walls. No obvious escape routes, the narrow passage blocked by 2 large males. Unless, the walls, she said suddenly. Kieran, look at the walls. Those cracks and ledges, could we climb them? She felt his attention shift, assessing the possibility. Maybe. It would be risky. And with your injuries, riskier than fighting 7 trained hunters? Point taken. A pause then. On my signal, you run for the eastern wall. Start climbing. Don't look back, don't wait for me. Just climb. What will you? I'll provide a distraction. His mental voice was firm, allowing no argument. Trust me. Before Kira could protest, Kieran acted. He lunged not at the hunters blocking their escape, but at the gray wolf who'd spoken. The attack was so sudden, so unexpected, that he crossed half the distance before anyone could react. The other hunters scrambled to intercept, creating exactly the chaos Kieran had intended. Now! He roared through the link. Run! Kira ran. Her injured feet screamed in protest, but she ignored the pain, throwing everything she had into reaching the canyon wall. Behind her, she heard snarls and yelps, the sounds of Kieran fighting multiple opponents at once. She reached the wall and started climbing, her claws finding purchase in narrow cracks, her muscles straining with every upward movement. It was slow, agonizing work, made worse by the fear thundering through her veins. Below, Kieran was magnificent, a whirlwind of black fur and golden fury, holding off 7 wolves through sheer skill and ferocity. But he was tiring. Taking hits, bleeding from multiple wounds. Keep climbing, his voice commanded when he felt her attention waver. Don't you dare look back. Kira climbed faster, pushing past exhaustion, past pain, past fear. She was halfway up the wall when she heard Kieran cry out, a sound of pain that went straight through her heart. Kieran, I'm fine. Keep going. But he wasn't fine. She could feel it through the link, his pain, his exhaustion, his desperation. He was losing. And there was nothing she could do to help him. Unless… Kira looked up at the canyon rim, now just 15 feet above her. Then down at Kieran, surrounded by enemies, bleeding and barely standing. She thought of Elena's words. The measure of a person isn't in how they're loved, but in how they choose to love others despite their own pain. And she made a choice. Chapter 9. Standing on the edge. Kira stopped climbing. What are you doing? Kieran's mental voice was panicked, furious. I told you to keep going. I'm not leaving you. Kira. No. She didn't let him finish. Instead, she did something she'd never done before, something she'd never even thought possible. She opened herself fully to the mental link between them, stopped holding back the emotions she'd been carefully containing, and let everything pour through. Her fear for him, her refusal to abandon him, her absolute conviction that she'd rather die fighting beside him than live knowing she'd left him behind. The wave of emotion hit Kieran like a physical force. She felt him stumble, felt his shock and wonder, and something that felt dangerously close to love. You impossible, stubborn, his mental voice was rough with emotion. Fine. Fine. But if we're doing this, we do it smart. What do you mean? Keep climbing. Get to the top, then do exactly what I say. Kira didn't understand, but she trusted him. She resumed her climb, moving as quickly as her battered body would allow. Behind her, she heard Kieran's renewed snarls, the sound of battle intensifying. She reached the canyon rim and pulled herself over the edge, gasping for breath. From this vantage point, she could see everything. Kieran surrounded by hunters, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still fighting. And beyond them, the narrow canyon passage that was their only escape route. Listen carefully. Kieran's voice came through the link, strained but focused. See those loose rocks near the eastern edge? The ones balanced on that ledge? Kira followed his mental direction. Yes, there was a pile of stones, some of them quite large, precariously positioned about 20 feet from where she stood. If those fell into the canyon, they'd block the passage, trap the hunters on this side while we escape on foot. Understanding flooded through Kira. But how do I move them? They're huge. You don't need to move all of them, just the key stone, the large flat one at the base. Remove that, and the rest will follow. A pause, then. But Kira, once you do this, you have to run immediately. Don't wait for me, don't look back. I'll meet you at the old oak grove 3 miles north. Do you remember where that is from when we were running? She did barely. They'd passed through it hours ago, a distinctive cluster of ancient trees. I remember. But Kieran, promise me. His mental voice was desperate. Promise you'll run and not wait. This only works if we separate their forces. If you stay, we're both dead. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to stay and fight beside him. But she understood the logic. Their only advantage was surprise and terrain. If she stayed, that advantage disappeared. I promise, she said finally. But you better keep your promise too. If you don't show up at that oak grove, I'll be there. His voice softened. I didn't survive 3 years as a rogue just to die now. Not when I finally have something worth living for. The words wrapped around Kira's heart, giving her strength. She shifted to human form. She'd need hands for this task, and ran to the rock pile. Up close, the stones were even larger than they'd appeared, and for a moment doubt crept in. Could she actually move them? Below, she heard Kieran cry out again. No more time for doubt. Kira braced herself against the keystone, planted her feet, and pushed with everything she had. At first, nothing happened. The stone was massive, immovable, and she was just one exhausted she-wolf who'd been running all night. But then she felt it, a tiny shift, barely perceptible. The stone was moving. She pushed harder, her muscles screaming, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The stone shifted again, then again, gaining momentum, and suddenly it was falling, tumbling down the canyon wall in a thunderous cascade, taking dozens of other rocks with it. The sound was deafening, like the earth itself was tearing apart. Kira watched as the avalanche crashed into the canyon below, directly into the narrow passage. Dust and debris exploded upward, obscuring everything. When it cleared, the passage was completely blocked, and the hunters were divided 3 on the canyon floor with Kieran, 4 on the other side of the rockfall, unable to reach them. Perfect! Kieran's voice was triumphant despite his pain. Now run. Kira didn't need to be told twice. She shifted and ran, her paws barely touching the ground as she raced north. Behind her, she heard frustrated howls as the separated hunters tried to find a way around the blockage. She ran until her lungs burned, until her vision blurred, until she thought she couldn't take another step, and then she ran some more. The old oak grove appeared like a miracle, ancient trees with trunks wider than 3 wolves, their bare branches reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. Kira collapsed at the base of the largest oak, sides heaving, too exhausted to even shift back to human form. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. Kieran didn't come. Kieran? She reached out through the mental link. But there was only silence. Not the silence of death she'd know if he'd died. Would feel the link sever completely. But something was blocking their connection. Or he was too weak to respond. Panic clawed at her throat. What if he'd been captured? What if he was dying somewhere, bleeding out while she waited uselessly? You promised, she reminded herself, Elena's voice echoing in her memory. You promised you'd wait. So she waited, curled at the base of the oak, shivering in the cold, every nerve screaming at her to go back and find him. Just as despair was beginning to overwhelm her, she heard the sound of someone approaching. Heavy footsteps, uneven gait, labored breathing. Kira's head snapped up. Through the trees, she saw him, Kieran in human form, limping badly, covered in blood and dirt. But alive. Alive and moving toward her with single-minded determination. She shifted and ran to him, catching him just as his legs gave out. They collapsed together onto the frozen ground, Kira supporting his weight, his blood soaking into her bare skin. You're late, she said, her voice shaking. Kieran's laugh was pained. Traffic was terrible. This isn't funny. You're hurt. I'm alive. He cupped her face with a hand that trembled from exhaustion. And so are you. That's all that matters. Let me see your wounds. She helped him sit against a tree and examined the damage. It was bad, deep gashes across his ribs, a nasty bite on his shoulder, numerous smaller cuts and bruises. He'd lost a lot of blood. I need to treat these, Kira said, her healer's training taking over despite her lack of supplies. Do you know what plants we need? No time. Kieran's voice was fading, exhaustion pulling him under. They'll get around the rockfall eventually. Maybe a few hours, maybe less. We need to keep moving. You can barely stand. Then you'll have to help me. His golden eyes met hers, urgent despite their exhaustion. Kira, we can't stop now. Not when we're so close to losing them. He was right. Again. Always right about these practical, terrible things. Fine. But we're going slower, and we're stopping at the first safe place we find so I can actually treat your wounds properly. Her voice was firm, allowing no argument. You're no good to either of us if you bleed out. Yes, ma'am. Kieran's smile was weak but genuine. Help me up? Together, they managed to get him standing. He shifted the transformation, clearly painful, and they set off north at a much slower pace than before. Kira stayed close, ready to support him if he stumbled. Thank you, Kieran said through the mental link. For the rockfall. For not leaving when I told you to. For being too stubborn to listen to sense. You're welcome. And thank you for not dying. I'll try to make a habit of it. They traveled through the day, stopping frequently for Kieran to rest. By late afternoon, they'd put considerable distance between themselves and the canyon, though Kira knew the hunters would still be searching. Men like Kane Blackwood didn't give up easily. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they found a small cave tucked into a hillside, not as nice as the one behind the waterfall, but defensible and hidden. Kieran collapsed immediately, shifting back to human form. His breathing was labored, his skin too pale. The wounds had stopped actively bleeding, but they needed proper treatment or infection would set in. Stay awake, Kira ordered, shifting as well. I'm going to find healing plants. Don't you dare pass out before I get back. Wouldn't dream of it, he mumbled, though his eyes were already drifting closed. Kira found what she needed nearby: yarrow, comfrey, some moss, even a few wintergreen leaves that would help with pain. Not a perfect selection, but enough to keep him alive until they could find better supplies. When she returned, Kieran had indeed passed out. Kira's heart lurched with fear before she saw his chest rising and falling steadily. Just exhausted. Then, not dead or dying, she worked quickly, cleaning and treating each wound with the efficiency her mother had taught her. As she worked, she studied his face, the strong jaw, the scarred features, the long dark hair tangled with blood and dirt. He was beautiful and broken and brave, and somewhere along the way, without fully realizing it, Kira had fallen completely in love with him. Not a mate bond, nothing the moon goddess had ordained, just a choice, a simple, terrifying, wonderful choice to love someone who loved her back. "You're staring," Kieran mumbled, without opening his eyes. Kira jumped. "I thought you were asleep. Resting. There's a difference." His golden eyes opened, focusing on her face. "Besides, I can feel you through the link. Your emotions are loud." Heat flooded Kira's cheeks. "Sorry. I didn't realize. Don't apologize." His hand found hers, squeezed gently. "I like knowing what you're feeling. Makes me feel less alone. You're not alone. Not anymore. Neither are you." He pulled her down beside him, wrapping an arm around her shoulders despite his injuries. "We have each other now. That's enough." Kira settled against his side, careful not to jostle his wounds. They lay together in the gathering darkness, two rogues with nothing but each other, and somehow it felt like more than enough. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now, we rest, heal. Tomorrow, we keep moving north until we're far enough from packed territories that they'll give up the chase." His voice was drowsy, sleep pulling him under. "Then we find a place to call home. Build something new. Together. Just like that, just like that." His arm tightened around her. Simple doesn't mean easy, but nothing worth having ever is. Kira closed her eyes, listening to his heartbeat, strong and steady despite everything. Behind them lay betrayal and loss and pain. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger, and the constant threat of discovery. But here, now, in this moment, they were safe. They were together, and they were free. "Kieran?" she whispered. I love you." The words hung in the air, vulnerable and terrifying. For a moment, Kieran didn't respond, and Kira wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake, if she'd pushed too fast, revealed too much, scared him away. "I love you too," he said softly. "I didn't think I'd ever say those words again, didn't think I could. But you make me want to try. Make me want to live instead of just survive." Relief and joy flooded through Kira so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes. "We're going to be okay, aren't we? Despite everything, we're going to make it." "Yes." Kieran's voice was certain, absolute, "because we're not alone anymore. And together we're stronger than anything they can throw at us." Kira wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to this moment of peace and hope and promise. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered warnings. The hunters were still out there. Kane Blackwood was still searching. And the bond with Damien, that hollow ache in her chest, still reminded her that some things couldn't be escaped simply by running. Still, for tonight, she chose to believe, chose to hope, chose to trust that love, even love not ordained by the moon goddess, could be enough to see them through. And as sleep finally claimed her, wrapped in Kieran's arms, Kira dreamed not of rejection and pain, but of a future where two broken wolves learned to be whole together. Chapter 10. Freedom's Price. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of running, hiding, surviving. 3 weeks of moving from cave to abandoned den to hollow tree, never staying in one place long enough to feel safe. 3 weeks of Kieran's wounds slowly healing while Kira learned what it truly meant to live as rogue. It was harder than she'd imagined. Not the physical hardships, though those were real enough. Hunger was a constant companion. Cold bit deep into their bones every night. And the exhaustion of always moving, always watching, always ready to run at the first sign of danger. It wore on them both. But the worst part was the isolation. No pack bonds humming beneath their skin, connecting them to something larger than themselves. No familiar voices calling greetings as they passed. No sense of belonging anywhere except to each other. Kira understood now why rogues went mad. The loneliness was a living thing, gnawing at the edges of sanity. "You're thinking too loud again," Kieran said from where he sat sharpening a makeshift spear. They'd found a more permanent shelter, a cave system deep in the northern mountains, far from any pack territory. It was cold and harsh, but it was theirs. "Sorry." Kira looked up from the rabbit hide she'd been working. They'd gotten better at hunting, at surviving, at making a life from nothing. "Just thinking about my mother, wondering if she's okay." It was a familiar worry, one that plagued her every night. Elena would know by now that Kira had run. Would she understand? Would she forgive her daughter for choosing freedom over duty? Would Thorn have punished her for Kira's escape? "She's fine," Kieran said with a confidence he couldn't possibly feel. "Healers are valuable. Your alpha wouldn't risk losing her over something you did. You don't know Thorn. He's vindictive when he feels disrespected. Then we'll find a way to get word to her. Let her know you're alive." Kieran set down the spear and moved to sit beside Kira, pulling her into his arms. "I promise. Once we're sure the search has ended, we'll figure out how to contact her safely." Kira leaned into his warmth, grateful beyond words for his steady presence. Over the past weeks, what had started as attraction and desperate connection had deepened into something unshakable. She loved him not with the frantic intensity of a mate bond, but with a quieter, chosen devotion that felt more real than anything the moon goddess could have given her. "I don't regret leaving," she said suddenly. "Even with everything, the hunger, the cold, the constant running. I don't regret choosing you." Kieran's arms tightened around her. "Good, because I'd follow you into hell itself if you asked. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." "Agreed." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Though at this rate, hell might be warmer than this cave." Kira laughed despite herself. "We could build up the fire." She never finished the sentence. The mental link between them suddenly blazed with alarm. Kieran's entire body went rigid, his head snapping toward the cave entrance. "They're here." His voice was tight with fear and fury. "Multiple wolves. Coming fast. They found us." "How?" Kira was already moving, gathering their meager supplies with practiced speed. "We were so careful." "Doesn't matter. We need to go. Now." They shifted together and bolted from the cave just as the first hunter appeared at the entrance. This time there were more, at least 10, maybe more, their howls echoing through the mountain valleys. "They're not trying to be subtle," Kira realized as they ran. "They want us to panic, to make mistakes. Then we don't panic." Kieran's mental voice was steady despite their desperate flight. "We stick to the plan, head for the northern pass, use the terrain to our advantage." They'd prepared for this possibility, scouted escape routes, identified defensible positions, created contingency plans. But knowing intellectually that they might be found was different from the reality of 10 trained hunters on their trail. The chase lasted hours, through treacherous mountain paths, across frozen streams, up slopes so steep that one wrong step meant death. The hunters were relentless, coordinated, clearly determined to end this once and for all. Kira's strength was flagging. 3 weeks of inadequate food and constant stress had taken their toll. She stumbled, nearly fell, and felt Kieran's immediate concern flood through the link. "I'm okay," she lied. "Keep going." "Like hell." Kieran slowed, positioning himself between her and their pursuers. "We need to split up. I'll lead them west while you—" "No." Kira's mental voice was absolute. "We've had this argument. We stay together." "Kira, you're exhausted. If we don't separate, they'll catch us both. Then they catch us both." She pushed harder, finding reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. "I meant what I said. Together or not at all." Before Kieran could argue further, they broke through a tree line and found themselves on a narrow ridge. On one side, a sheer cliff drop, on the other, steep mountainside, and ahead, blocking their path, Alpha Cane Blackwood in human form, flanked by 6 wolves. Behind them, the hunters who'd been chasing them emerged from the trees, cutting off retreat. They were trapped. Kieran and Kira shifted to human form, standing side by side on the narrow ridge. The wind cut through them like knives, but neither showed weakness. "This ends now," Kane said, his voice carrying over the wind. 3 weeks you've made fools of my hunters. 3 weeks of leading us on a chase across half the territory. Enough." "We're not on Packlands," Kieran replied calmly. "You have no authority here." I have the authority of superior numbers and justified anger. Kane's eyes were cold. You attacked my son, corrupted a pack wolf, killed 3 of my hunters in your escape. I killed no one. Kieran's voice cracked like a whip. I defended myself and Kira. If your hunters died, it was because they kept attacking long after I'd given them chances to back off. Lies. But something flickered in Kane's expression, doubt, maybe, or recognition that the truth was more complicated than he'd been told. Is it? Kieran gestured to Kira. Look at her. Does she look corrupted? Forced? Or does she look like someone who made a choice, a hard, desperate choice, because staying meant punishment for a crime she didn't commit? For the first time, Kane's attention focused fully on Kira. She stood straight despite her exhaustion, her chin raised, meeting his gaze without flinching. My son rejected you, Kane said, and it wasn't a question. That's why you ran. That's what started all of this. Kira's throat tightened, but she forced the words out. Yes, Damien is my mate, was my mate. He looked at me, decided I wasn't good enough, and rejected the bond. Your alpha thorn threatened to exile me, to hurt my mother, if I didn't deny it ever happened. When Kieran saved my life, when he showed me kindness, I chose to leave rather than live under constant threat. That's the truth. Silence fell over the ridge. The hunters shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Even Kane looked taken aback. Damien rejected his mate. One of the wolves, a female with gray markings, shifted to human form, her voice sharp with disbelief. Alpha, you told us this was about a dangerous rogue attacking pack wolves. You never mentioned, it's irrelevant. Kane cut her off, but his voice lacked conviction. Irrelevant? The female hunter's expression hardened. A rejected mate is sacred business, Alpha. The moon goddess herself. The moon goddess made a mistake. Kane's composure cracked. My son was destined for greatness. I will not have his future derailed by an unsuitable mate. And there it was, the ugly truth beneath all the lies. This wasn't about justice or protecting pack wolves. This was about pride and reputation, and a father unwilling to accept that his son had committed one of the greatest taboos in wolf culture. So you'd rather hunt her down like a criminal? The gray-marked female took a step back from Kane, her allegiance clearly wavering. Force her into a life she didn't choose? That's not justice. That's tyranny. That's pack law, Kane snarled. And if you question my authority, I question your honor. The female's voice rang out clear and strong. I'm a hunter, not a tool for persecuting rejected mates. If this is what Iron Ridge has become, I want no part of it. 2 other wolves shifted to human form, nodding agreement. The unified front Kane had brought was fracturing, dissolving in the face of truth, but not all of them were convinced. 4 hunters remained loyal, positioned and ready to attack on Kane's command. This changes nothing, Kane said, though uncertainty shadowed his face. The rogue still stands accused of attacking my wolves. In self-defense. Kieran's voice was raw. I've spent 3 years avoiding confrontation, running from every pack that tried to force me into their borders or kill me for sport. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be left alone. Then you shouldn't have helped her. Kane's gesture toward Kira was almost contemptuous. You should have let nature take its course. Let her die, you mean? Kieran's golden eyes blazed with fury. That's what you're really saying? That she should have frozen to death in the snow because your son decided she wasn't pretty enough, wasn't high-ranking enough, wasn't good enough for his precious future. My son made a practical choice. Your son made a cruel one. Kieran moved slightly in front of Kira, protective even in the face of overwhelming odds. And rather than teach him honor, rather than help him understand that mate bonds are sacred regardless of status or appearance, you helped him cover it up, threatened the one person he should have protected, and now you're hunting her to tie up loose ends, to make sure no one ever knows that the great Blackwood bloodline rejected a mate. The words hung in the cold mountain air like an accusation. Even the loyal hunters looked uncomfortable now. Enough talking. Kane's voice went flat. Dangerous. You have one chance. Surrender peacefully. Face judgment. Or die here on this ridge. Choose. Kira felt Kieran's hand find hers, their fingers interlacing. Through the mental link, she felt his love, his regret, his absolute refusal to surrender. If we fight, he said quietly, we'll probably die. The odds are too bad. I know, but if we surrender, they'll separate us. Execute me, force you back to your pack. You'll never be free. I know that too. So what do we do? There was a question in his mental voice, but also an answer. He knew what she'd choose. Had probably known from the moment they met. We fight. Kira squeezed his hand. Together, Kieran agreed. Then, aloud to Kane, we choose freedom, even if it costs us everything. The Alpha's expression hardened. So be it. He raised his hand, preparing to signal the attack. Stop! The shout came from behind Kane's line, and every head turned. Through the hunters strode a figure Kira recognized with a jolt of shock and pain. Damien. Her rejected mate looked different from the last time she'd seen him, thinner, with dark circles under his amber eyes and a haunted expression that spoke of sleepless nights. He walked with the determination of someone who'd traveled far and fast. Damien? Kane's surprise was evident. What are you doing here? You were supposed to stay at... I followed you. Damien's voice was hoarse. I knew what you were planning. The hunt for Kira. The lies you told your hunters. I couldn't let you do this, Father. Not in my name. He stepped forward, his eyes finding Kira's. The mate bond flared between them, still there, still present despite his rejection, still pulling at her with phantom threads. Kira, Damien said quietly. I'm sorry. For everything. For rejecting you. For being too cowardly to fight for what the moon goddess gave us. For letting my pride and ambition blind me to what truly mattered. Kira's throat tightened. She dreamed of hearing these words, of Damien realizing his mistake. But now, standing beside Kieran, feeling his solid presence and unwavering support, she realized those dreams were remnants of a person she no longer was. Why are you here, Damien? She asked, her voice steady. Because I felt it. Through the bond, your fear, your desperation, your certainty that you were about to die. His hands clenched into fists. And I realized that even though I rejected you, even though I was too stupid and selfish to accept you, I couldn't live with your death on my conscience. I couldn't let my father kill you because of my mistakes. How touching, Kane said coldly. But this doesn't concern you, son. Return home. Let me handle. No. Damien turned to face his father, and something in his bearing had changed. He stood straighter, more certain. This ends here. Kira committed no crime. She has every right to choose her own path, even if that path doesn't include me. And if you continue this hunt, if you harm her or Kieran, I'll stand against you. Publicly. I'll tell every pack in the region what really happened. How you covered up my mate rejection. How you persecuted an innocent she-wolf. How you perverted justice to protect our family's reputation. The threat was nuclear. Mate rejection was shameful enough, but covering it up, lying about it, hunting the rejected mate that could destroy an alpha's credibility entirely. Kane's face went white with rage. You would betray your own blood, your own pack. I would choose honor over reputation. Damien's voice didn't waver. Something you should have taught me from the beginning. Father and son stared at each other. A lifetime of complicated relationship crystallizing into this single moment of defiance. Finally, Kane stepped back. Fine. Let them go. But Damien, this isn't over. When we return home, you and I will have words about loyalty and family. I look forward to it. Damien's tone suggested otherwise. Kane gestured sharply to his hunters. We're leaving. This hunt is over. Most of the wolves obeyed immediately, clearly relieved. But a few hesitated, looking between the alpha and his son, uncertain whose authority to follow. Now, Kane commanded. And the last holdouts fell into line. Within minutes, the ridge was clearing. The hunters disappeared back into the forest, Kane among them, his dignity in tatters. Only Damien remained. He approached slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. Kieran tensed beside Kira, a low growl building in his chest. Easy, Kira murmured, though her own nerves were screaming. Let's hear what he has to say. Damien stopped a respectful distance away, his eyes moving between Kira and Kieran. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I rejected you, Kira. Threw away the greatest gift the moon goddess could have given me because I was blind and stupid and more concerned with status than substance. Yes, Kira agreed quietly. You did. Damien flinched but continued. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I can see. His gaze flicked to their joined hands, to the way Kieran stood protectively close. That you found something real, something I was too foolish to appreciate. Then why are you here? Kieran's voice was hard. If you know you can't have her back, why follow us? Why help us? Because she deserved better than what I gave her. Damien's expression was raw with regret. And because I hope that someday, maybe years from now, when the memory doesn't hurt so much, she might believe that I genuinely wanted her to be happy. Even if that happiness doesn't include me. The mate bond thrummed between them. And Kira felt Damien's sincerity, his genuine remorse. It didn't erase the pain of his rejection, didn't magically heal the wounds he'd inflicted, but it was something. I accept your apology, Kira said finally. Not because it fixes anything, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. You made your choice, Damien, and I made mine. We both have to live with that. I know. Damien's smile was sad. For what it's worth, he's a lucky male. Kieran, right? At Kieran's curt nod, Damien continued. Take care of her. She's stronger and braver than anyone gives her credit for, including me. I know exactly how strong she is, Kieran said, his voice softening slightly. And I'll protect her with my life. You have my word. Damien nodded, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small pouch. Take this. Herbs from my pack stores, some coin, supplies you'll need. Consider it restitution for everything I put you through. Kira accepted the pouch, surprised by its weight. Thank you. There's one more thing. Damien's expression turned serious. Your mother. Elena. She's fine, worried sick about you. But fine. Thorn tried to use her to force your return, but my father intervened. Said it would look bad for Iron Ridge if our allied pack punished innocent healers. She's safe, Kira. I made sure of it. Relief so profound it made her dizzy flooded through Kira. She's really okay? You're not lying to. I'm not lying. I may be many things, but I'm not cruel enough to give false hope about that. Damien pulled out a folded piece of paper. She wrote you a letter. I smuggled it out. Read it when you're ready. Kira took the letter with shaking hands, Elena's familiar handwriting visible through the thin paper. Tears burned in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. For this. For all of this. It's the least I could do. Damien took a step back, preparing to leave. I should go. My father will be furious enough without me lingering. He paused, meeting Kira's eyes one last time. Be happy, Kira. That's all I ask. Be happier than you ever could have been with me. Then he shifted and was gone, disappearing into the forest after his father's hunting party. Silence fell over the ridge. Kira stood frozen, clutching her mother's letter, trying to process everything that had just happened. Are you okay? Kieran asked softly. I don't know. Kira looked up at him, at his golden eyes full of concern and love. I thought I'd feel something when I saw him again. Anger, or pain, or even hope that he'd changed. But I just felt empty, like he was a stranger. The bond is dying. Kira pressed her hand to her chest, where the hollow ache had been a constant companion for weeks. It's still there, but it's fading, becoming background noise instead of agony. And when he stood there apologizing, all I could think was how grateful I am that he rejected me, because if he hadn't, I never would have found you. Kieran pulled her close, and Kira melted into his embrace. I love you, he said fiercely. Not because fate ordained it, but because you're brave and stubborn and impossible. Because you chose me when you could have chosen safety. Because you make me want to be better than I am. I love you too. Kira tilted her head back to look at him. So what now? We're free. We have supplies. And apparently my mother is safe. What do we do with all this unexpected freedom? A slow smile spread across Kieran's face. Whatever we want. We could keep moving north. Find somewhere truly remote. Or head east toward the coast. Or south to warmer territories. The world is open to us, Kira. No pack rules, no alpha commands. Just us, and whatever future we choose to build. That sounds terrifying. It is. And exciting. That too. Kira laughed, the sound echoing across the mountain ridge, free and genuine and full of hope. Then let's do it. Let's find somewhere to call home. Build something new. Together. Together, Kieran agreed, pressing his forehead to hers in that gesture that had become theirs. Always together, they stood on the ridge as the sun set, two rogues who'd found each other in the darkest moment, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber and promise. Behind them lay pain and rejection and loss. Ahead lay uncertainty and challenge and the constant work of building a life from nothing. But they had each other, and somehow, that was enough. That night, in a small cave miles from the confrontation, Kira finally opened her mother's letter. The words blurred through her tears. My dearest Kira, if you're reading this, it means Damien found you and you're alive. Thank the moon goddess. I've been sick with worry, not knowing if you survived, if you were happy, if you regretted your choice. Don't regret it, baby. I've seen what happens to wolves who stay in places that break them. They wither, they fade, they become shadows of who they should be. You chose yourself, you chose love, you chose freedom. I'm so proud of you for that courage. I'm safe. Damien's father intervened when Thorn tried to punish me. Apparently even alphas have limits when it comes to persecuting healers. I miss you terribly, but I understand why you had to go. And I hope I pray that wherever you are, whoever you're with, you found the happiness you deserve. Live, little one. Live fully and bravely and without apology. That's all any mother wants for her child. All my love. Always, Mama. Kira read the letter 3 times, memorizing every word. Then she tucked it carefully into her pack, a precious connection to the life she'd left behind. Everything okay? Kieran asked from where he sat tending their fire. Yes. Kira moved to sit beside him, leaning into his warmth. Everything's perfect. And for the first time since her mate had rejected her, since her world had fallen apart, since she'd found herself dying in the snow, Kira meant it. She was free. She was loved. She was home. Not in a place, but in a person who'd chosen her just as she'd chosen him. And that was more than enough. That was everything. Epilogue. 6 months later, Kira stood at the edge of a meadow, watching the sunset paint the sky. They'd found it 3 months ago, a hidden valley deep in unclaimed territory, far from any packlands. A place where 2 rogues could build a life without fear of discovery. They'd built a small cabin, planted a garden, made friends with a few other rogues, who'd settled in the area, outcasts and refugees who'd found each other, and chosen to form something that wasn't quite a pack but wasn't solitary either. A community of the lost, building something new together. And the mate bond? It had finally died completely. The hollow ache in Kira's chest had faded to nothing, leaving only peace behind. She'd heard through the rogue network that Damien had taken a chosen mate, a high-ranking she-wolf from a neighboring pack. She hoped he was happy, hoped he'd learned from his mistakes. But mostly, she didn't think about him at all. There you are. Kieran's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Dinner's almost ready. Elena's stew recipe. I think I finally got it right. Kira smiled. They'd managed to exchange a few letters with her mother over the months, carefully routed through sympathetic rogues. Elena was well, still serving as Silverpaw's healer, and overjoyed to know her daughter was safe and happy. I love you, Kira said, turning in Kieran's arms to face him. Have I mentioned that today? Only 3 times. You're slacking. His golden eyes sparkled with humor and warmth. I love you too, more every day, if that's possible. They kissed as the sun set behind them, 2 broken wolves who'd found healing in each other. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better, a real one. Messy and imperfect and absolutely right. And as darkness fell over their hidden valley, as the stars emerged one by one above them, Kira thought about the journey that had brought her here, the rejection that had nearly destroyed her, the mysterious black wolf who'd curled around her body to keep her alive, the impossible choice to run rather than surrender. Every painful step had been worth it, because she'd learned the most important lesson. Sometimes the moon goddess's plan isn't the one written in mate bonds and destiny. Sometimes it's the one you write yourself, with courage and choice and the willingness to fight for your own happiness. And that was the greatest gift of all. What a journey, right? Before you go, tell me, Team Destiny or Team Choice? Comment below. And if this story captured your heart, please leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.